This presentation No, no, it's fine. Didn't I
No, you can just.
Good evening. My clock says 6 o'clock, so I think it's probably time to get started. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Manson. Present. Templin.
Here.
Lane.
Here.
Huggins. Here. Milburn.
Here.
Maddock. Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like Commissioner Maddock is absent today.
Thank you. Before we get started, just for all of you, thank you very much for coming. I know you've got other things to do with your life, and I appreciate, trust me, we've been in many of these meetings where nobody shows up, so I'm really glad you came. We do have an overflow room that I believe has been set up. I'm sorry we don't have enough chairs for everyone, but if you would like to have a chair, we do have an overflow room with the streaming if you wish to sit. If you want to stand, that's up to you too, but just making that available. So begin with our agenda. Item 3A, general business, approve planning commission agenda. Anyone have any comments or changes, suggested corrections?
Make a motion, we approve the planning commission agenda as written.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Seeing none, it's approved. Item 3B, approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held on August 27th, 2024. Any changes, additions, or corrections to be made?
I make a motion, we accept the,
We can hear you.
excuse me, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I would note that Commissioner Medoc has arrived.
Sorry?
Did you want any changes to the last minutes? Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes have been adopted. Item 3C, disclosure of conflicts of interest. This would be a conflict of interest for any matter that's before the Planning Commission this evening. Anybody have anything to disclose?
No.
Okay, seeing none. Disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business.
I've had a few communications with a few of these people as well as emails.
I think we've all received some emails.
Yes, I've had a couple calls too.
Okay. Anything in particular you want to disclose? We good?
Normal conversation.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just a reminder, use the microphones. With a room full like this, you really can't hear unless we're speaking into our microphones in the back, so that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I believe that resolves our general business. Moving then to the call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the Planning Commission regarding items not on the agenda tonight may do so at this time. Any presentations for informational purposes only, no action will be taken. There is a 4-minute time limit. If anyone would like to address the Planning Commission on matters not on the agenda tonight, please approach the podium and give us your name and address. Seeing none, is there anyone online we need to recognize?
There is one visitor online. If you're invited to unmute and address the commission if you wish to under call to public. Sounds like a no thank you.
I will close the call to the public. So that brings us to item 5A, public hearing to consider 3 rezonings at K10 and Kill Creek Road.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brad Weisenberger, Community Development Director, City of DeSoto. We did receive a rezoning application on the 20th of August to rezone tract at K10 and Kill Creek Road from R1, and actually there are 3 rezoning requests to R3, R2, and C2, so therefore we will need to have 3 public hearings and 3 separate motions. So we did talk about that, but I just want to make that clear for everybody in the room that the Planning Commission will take each item and have 3 separate public hearings on each distinct zoning request.
If I could, before we get too far into the content of this, probably should discuss this from the Planning Commission's perspective. I had suggested earlier in kind of looking through this that there are 3 separate applications. I think that it's probably appropriate that we're going to do 3 separate public hearings, but do an overview to begin with, then do a public hearing on the first application, table that, do a public hearing on the second one, table that, do a public hearing on the third, table that, then bring them all up for discussion, and then do 3 separate votes. So that way I don't think everybody feels like they've got to shoot everything they got in the first round. We got 3 of these things to go through. So is that acceptable?
Yes.
Makes sense to me.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Brad.
thank you, Chairman. Going through some of our perfunctory items, we did send out notification letters to owners within the 200-foot buffer of the property. Also, signs have been put up. I have met with the applicant several times. Travis Schramm, representing Grouted Development, is the owner of the property. He's here in the crowd tonight and would like to address the Planning Commission after I complete my staff report. And it does have a brief slideshow that I'd like to have him present. I did receive several phone calls, met with several residents, and also there have been several requests for protest petitions on this project. Jumping into the general zoning requirements, the existing zoning is R1. It's residential low density. The intent is to provide residential development to reinforce residential neighborhoods. It's typically in DeSoto large tract, 1 acre and above areas that are surrounding this property, primarily to the south and to the north and to the east. Currently, the tract is vacant. The existing uses, as I said, are large lot, single-family homes, and then, of course, Kill Creek Road is to the west with the Zimmerman's Barn, and then also to the south is K-10 Highway. There are three requests for rezoning. First one is R3 we'll talk about. It's, as you know, in our R3 district, we can allow multifamily, duplex, and single family. So the whole process is to develop either a preliminary plat or a site plan if it's multifamily as we go through the process for approval. So the rezoning, as you know, is just a land use discussion only on the first phase of moving forward with potential development. The second request is for R2, which is for medium density. It's two-family, duplexes, or single-family. However, the developers indicated to myself with the previous meetings we've had to have single-family residential for this area, and then also a preliminary plat is required to move forward with that. And also with preliminary plats, notification of the residents nearby is required as well. And then finally, C2, business general, as you can imagine, is retail, trade, restaurants, professional services, healthcare, things like that, travel accommodations. So you can see, moving to the existing zoning map, we talked about this. The R1 is the predominant district in the area. There is quite a bit of RO, which is residential suburban. The only real difference between RO and R1 is the setbacks in the tract, and we've talked about those differences quite a few times at Planning Commission regarding accessory buildings and things of that nature. As you can see, there is a little bit of C2 on the southwest corner of K-10 Highway, but this request, as you can see, is for the R1 tract along Kill Creek and K-10 in the northeast corner. Do have an aerial photo of the site, just sort of reinforcing that there's a lot of rural residential in the area. Then, of course, you can see K-10 Highway as well. The proposed zoning, as you can see, considers R2, C2, and R3. The R2 is, as I said, is the intent of the developer is to have single-family residential. Pros C2, we've talked about hotel, restaurant, convenience store, those type things. And then the R3, there's 6 buildings that are proposed at this time. Now, once again, the R3 will require a site plan, so this is very preliminary information, but it does give us an idea of the intent of the development and how they would like to proceed, assuming that the rezoning requests and all the items that must follow are met as we move through our development process. I will go through at this time, Mr. Chairman, the rezoning request R3. Now, basically, because it's the same tract, a lot of the issues are the same across the board, whether it's R3 or R2 or the C2. But I'll start with the character of the neighborhood. If we talked about it, it's R1. It's large tract residential. The primary reason that it stayed this way is because there are no sanitary sewer in the area. Just as a side note, I looked up when K-10 Highway was completed from Lenexa to Lawrence, and it was completed in 1978. So this tract has remained vacant for over 40 years. Compatibility of the proposed zoning and uses permitted therein. The R3 is in line with several of the proposed residential rezonings that we've had in front of the Planning Commission over the last couple of years. There is a trend in DeSoto towards multifamily. Another thing about the R3 in this area, the high-density districts tend to be along highway districts, which is what they're requesting as well. As far as the R2 goes, it will be to the north of the R3, and it is also buffered by, it'll be, as when we talk about reinforcing the single-family nature, it'll have a road in front of it. Those houses will back up to the road that sort of bisects the property. And also there's a fairly significant draw, which will be open space between the R2 and the potential C2. And of course, the C2 will be along Kill Creek Road to access our Kill Creek Road, which is an arterial road, and there'll be typically towards travel accommodations, things of that nature as well. Also, just for informational purpose, the city of DeSoto owns a 60-foot tract of Waverly Road that extends from the paved area between this property and the back up to that backs up to the residences on the east side of this tract. So there is an area that the city of DeSoto owns that is not really going to be part of any kind of pavement or any kind of development in that area. So there is a bit of a built-in buffering. Suitability of the uses, which the property has been restricted under its existing zoning. It hasn't been restricted under its existing zoning as R1, and there haven't been any development projects proposed really. We've had some conversations with developers over the last 8 years that I've been with the city of DeSoto, but the property has been marketed as commercial for quite some time. Length of time the property's remained vacant, as I'd mentioned, that when K10 came through, it's been vacant for over 40 years. The extent to which there's a need in the community for the uses, one thing that we've talked about with the Planning Commission and also City Council is variety of housing. We've looked at pricing and trying to find different ways to draw people into DeSoto. With that, we've talked about lot widths, sizes, and architectural features and all sorts of different ways to help increase the population and also provide different housing choices and costs, because we've looked at workforce housing as a high need as well. The availability and adequacy of required utilities and services. Now, this is the one that we did note was a negative for this development. There are no sanitary sewers there. The city of DeSoto does have a water main along Kill Creek and an 8-inch line along Waverly. Electricity is already on site. Public service accommodations, police, fire, and parks will see some additional requirements for services. We don't have a good handle on those exactly yet. We don't know, the densities and things like that, but obviously when you add people to an area, you will need some additional services as well. Finally, the concern of Waverly, or the condition of Waverly Road and 89th Street is a concern. Those are rural county roads. They're not designed to handle any of this traffic. One thing to note, though, is the primary access is off of Kill Creek. There will be some coordination likely with KDOT for that interchange or that access point, since KDOT does own the right-of-way to the very northern portion of this property. We will, though, require site plans. As I've said before, you've seen many of those in front of you, and which will require traffic analysis and show the impacts to the road network, and then how the site will have the proper utilities brought to its location. The extent which the use is allowed in the proposed zoning would adversely affect the street network. I guess I touched on that a little bit as far as the travel patterns will have to be analyzed with the traffic impact study. As far as the multifamily, all parking would need to be on site. We do have a 1.5 units per dwelling unit required. Garage parking does count towards that, so there won't be any on-street parking for the multifamily. And of course, we do have parking requirements for the commercial districts as well as requirements for single family, which do require 2 units off-street. Environmental impacts, provided that all our development procedures are followed. And once again, we've met with the developer, made those items clear. Don't see any environmental harm with stormwater, as long as, once again, they'll be required to submit stormwater development plans, meet all the utilities. I've mentioned sewer a lot, but there's stormwater requirements, road widths, paving strengths, all sorts of things that the city looks at to make sure that it meets our requirements for development. The economic impact, it's seen as a positive. Anything that brings new development, increases property values, increases sales tax, is a benefit to the city of DeSoto. The extent which the zoning amendment may detrimentally affect the nearby properties. This is certainly an upzoning in this area from what's been there, and the change to R3, R2, and C2 is certainly a concern of the residents nearby. But we do have screening, buffering, setbacks, Once again, the terrain of the site also lends itself to some buffering issues as well. We will look at landscaping, lighting, traffic, utility, and even architectural standards for this project. Overall, the relative gain of public health and safety from denying the rezoning. We looked at, once again, I've talked with a lot of the residents of the areas, looked at our land use plan, looked at a lot of things that we've been looking for as far as trying to accommodate a burgeoning economic and employment center that's the former Sunflower site, and this is the type of thing that communities are faced with, these types of decisions. I do feel like this is something that would be strongly considered for this location. And ultimately, I did mention future land use map. As our city administrator, we had talked earlier, it's been on the DeSoto Comprehensive Plan for 20 years that this site has been mixed use. I feel like the opportunity to have, once again, a mixed use with multifamily, residential, and commercial is an appropriate location. This is in essence, an interstate highway with a diamond interchange, and throughout the metro area and the country, really, that's what you see at these locations. So overall, staff recommends approval of these 3 rezonings. It's consistent with the land use plan, the utilities, and the traffic. We feel confident can be worked out as far as how our city code guides us, and we do believe that this is ultimately a positive for the city of DeSoto. And once again, I do would like to have in the motion that the site plan and the preliminary plats are part of the process, even though that's in our code. I think it'd be good to make that into the motion as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions. And once again, I want to reiterate that Travis Schramm, the applicant, is here and would like to address the Planning Commission as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Brad?
Brad, you mentioned there was a 60-foot section of that DeSoto owns behind the R3 and R1 area. Do you mind pointing that out for me on the map?
Yeah, Mike, if you could
Yep.
pull up Ames, but it's.
So the track is generally here, 60 acres, and the portion that I think Brad's talking about is essentially it's a right-of-way for Waverly Road.
Oh.
When this adjacent subdivision was platted, this right-of-way was granted. So it's not technically city-owned, it's owned in common, it's public right-of-way. That's what it is, so I'll highlight it. It's that tract.
That's basically what's left of Waverly Road, isn't it?
It would have been the extension of Waverly if Waverly ever were to continue over the highway.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for Brad?
So I guess just so I'm clear, so we're going to comment on just this application right now, and then the next one, the R2, will be later? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to hopefully have some logic to this, if you have general comments, you can probably make those this time if you want to do that, or any questions about that. What's going to be, the next thing that happens is we'll do a public hearing on the R3 specifically, and then we'll move to the public hearing on the R2 and then the C. I believe that's the order.
I have one additional question, if you guys don't mind.
No.
You said we were finding was neutral on utilities in that area, mainly because there's no, I believe, sewer, or is that right?
Yeah, well, actually, I had negative for
Oh,
the
sorry.
utilities and the roadway network.
What's the plan for that, I guess? Would that be a developer question?
It is. Now, we have had preliminary discussions with the developer on how the tracks might be sewered. And once again, the traffic study itself will help recommend the actual improvements that will need to be taking place there. And we know improvements will need to happen, and the developer is well aware of that as also.
Thank you.
So I guess really the only question I have would be on the R2 request, why would the traffic study and stormwater study not be needed on that submittal if they move forward with that first?
Well, typically, that comes with the preliminary plat.
Yes.
So once again, this is just really in essence a mapping change. It's a land use change, and that's all we're looking at tonight. Even though we know those things, obviously Commissioner Milburn are out there. You've done several of them, but at this point it is just a rezoning
To be clear,
request.
the question you have,
Well, yeah,
why is the conclusion not the same on all
Right.
three of them?
Yes, that's correct.
Your conclusion didn't pick up both items on all three?
Okay, well, if I might have missed that.
But you intended it to be for all three of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yes, thank you. That's correct.
Any other questions for Brad? Does the commission wish to hear from the applicant?
I would like to.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess we'll hear from the applicant.
Sure.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah. Travis Schramm with Grotto Development, 11282 South Belmont Street, Olathe, Kansas, 66061. Well, wait while Mike pulls this up. Just thought I'd address the Planning Commission and give a little more color to our proposal for this site. It's a site that I'm really excited about for the utility it can bring to the city. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through a few slides and be glad to stand for questions now. I didn't break my presentation up into the different applications, so I'm just going to hit it all three parts if that's fine. And if you got questions later, I'd be glad to answer them. So if this is a little bit about us, we're Kansas City folks. I actually just came up one exit up K10 to get here tonight from home, and these are some of our developments here in mostly in Johnson County. So go ahead to the next slide. Just a little bit about kind of those and what we do, where we are. Mostly single-family residential, a little bit of retail, a little bit of multifamily. Go ahead to the next slide, Mike. This is obviously the site we're looking at, and we view this site very similar to a project we did in Gardner along I-35 at 175th Street. And so I'm going to draw some comparisons to that project throughout my presentation, just to kind of give you some more color about what it is. When you're looking at it blobs on a map, it just doesn't feel quite the same. So that's the point of my presentation. So as Brad laid out, this is kind of our proposal. This is our preliminary. It's an R2 zoning, but it's a single-family zoning. We've been following your change in your R2 zoning to allow for a little narrower lot, and that's something we've used frequently in Olathe, Spring Hill, and Gardner. It's been very successful. It helps us keep a real high quality and hit a price point that's really attractive to folks. So go to the next slide. So here's how it might lay out on an aerial photo. This is a drone photo that we had shot. We're really pleased with how we're able to transition. This has been a planned mixed-use development, and we want to respect the surrounding neighbors by transitioning from a intense use commercial along the hard corner, the multifamily along the interstate, and transitioning to a single-family product, even though it is an R2 zoning. Go ahead. This is that project I just spoke about. It's a little bit larger of a site. This is a 262-acre site, and you can see our single family here is furthest away from I-35. I-35 is in the background there. Top left corner there is our Treadway Apartments at New Trails. We got a Phillips 66 going in there on the hard corner of the interstate. So this is just kind of a similar project. This is kind of the front of those houses and price points that those houses hit at. And, you know, obviously the trees are a little bit small yet, but they'll come along. And this site had a lot less beauty to it. It was a corn and soybean field prior to this, where this site that we're talking about currently has a lot more topography, a lot more movement on the site, and a lot more trees. And we're grateful for that. Go ahead, Mike. So this is just a little aerial view to show house spacings. I know sometimes it's hard to get a feel for what a 50-foot lot looks like. And so this is a development with a 50-foot lot with 5-foot side yard setbacks. So a 40-foot wide house. But some interior shots of those houses, high quality product. Go ahead. This is our multifamily project on that same site. Like I said, it was in the upper left-hand corner along the interstate. This is along I-35. This is a Treadway Apartments. It was 288 units in this first phase. And you can see just kind of some interior features. In the bottom right-hand corner is the clubhouse. You can kind of see the pool. We've got shuffleboard, golf simulator. We're really excited about what we brought here to serve workforce housing in Gardner. This is the first apartment buildings in Gardner with elevators, and we're really proud of that we're serving both the senior community and the young workforce folks that are engaged in the community. So here's some more of the amenities. It has a gym, maker space, movie theater thing as well. Another interior shot on the multifamily, just kind of the level of finish that we're used to on a project that we're envisioning for this site. Go ahead. And then transit-focused retail. Obviously, there's not a ton of retail space that's planned for this site, but it's right on K10, and frankly, it's a better access interchange than Lexington is. It's on and off. I know a lot of people in Leavenworth County come over the bridge every morning and get on the highway at K10, and they could stop for gas, stop for coffee, and bring some sales tax to DeSoto. That's the neighbor's sales tax is the best sales tax. We've always said that, right? So just that kind of stuff. So, and then this shot, and this is my last slide, just kind of showing the way the topography lays out against this site. We're leaving a lot of trees, especially against our neighbors to the north and to the northwest. The draws, the way we are envisioning the cul-de-sacs, and obviously this is going to have to come back with a preliminary plan and final plats, et cetera. But this is the way we're seeing it and buffering that, and transitioning from the interstate to an intense use to a much less intense use. And so I just think it's hard to envision without getting it on an aerial like that. So I wanted to put that up there and show that to y'all. So that's what I've got for tonight, but I'm glad to answer any questions, either now or later.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant now?
Yeah, just one question. So the R2 you're intending to do single family?
Yes, we're planning to utilize the kind of the new lot shapes that are in sizes that you guys have recently been reviewing.
Okay, thank you.
You said phase one of the apartments was 288 units.
No, that was that particular project. I'm sorry. We have not planned out the multifamily usage there.
Units gonna go in there.
Not at this point, no.
I'm sure there may be other questions later, but thank you very
Okay.
much for the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Roger, I'd like to ask you a question.
We'll get to public hearing here in a moment.
Okay.
In fact, it's a good segue because we should open that up right now. So if there's no objections, go ahead and move to the public hearing on this, and we would love to hear from you. Please do be respectful of each other and certainly of your planning commissioners who aren't getting paid, so please be kind. But please give your name and address for the record, and just ask you to approach the podium. Oh, I should make that clarification. So your comments, I think, are welcome with regard to any of this. This is a public hearing regarding the R3 proposed, the R3 is the first one, right? Yeah, the R3. So the R3 is the pink, that's the multifamily. That, if you could tailor your comments to that, we'd appreciate it, but I certainly understand because you've heard a lot. If you need to say something, go ahead and say it.
Neil Parker, 8940 Waverly Road. To educate everybody here, Commissioner, you might want to go through the process. If this gets approved tonight, what then would be the next hearing? So everybody, I'm in this business, I do this all the time. Not everybody here knows the process. It's preliminary plat, final plat. So I'd ask that first, just to help clear up any communication.
Thank you, Neil. I'm certainly happy to go through that. This is a rezoning. It's to determine the appropriate use for this particular tract. The rezoning then, if it's recommended to be approved from the Planning Commission, it will go before the City Council, I assume at the next City Council meeting.
No, there's a 14-day period, a
Okay.
protest period, so it can't be the next one, it would be the
Two
second.
meetings away.
Yes.
Because they'll go
second
through the
meeting.
protest period.
Yeah.
If the City Council approves the rezoning, nothing's happened until the applicant would come back with a plat, and the plat then would lay out exactly what's planned. I'm guessing it will come back with a site plan, and certainly with the commercial property and the R3. I don't know that we'd ever see a site plan again for R2 other than the plat.
Correct, it'd be a preliminary plat,
Yeah,
then a final plat, and then site plans between there on the C2 and R3, but no site plan on the R2.
okay. So there will be several other stages, and those are important distinctions because this is determining the appropriate nature of the land use as opposed to the particular use that's being proposed. The particular use that's being proposed will go through things like the traffic study, will go through the utilities, and so the question before us today here on the rezoning is this an appropriate land use for this location? Is that helpful?
Yeah, I just,
Thank
not
you.
everybody
Thank you
else
for
does it all
calling
the
out.
time, so I just want to make sure everybody
Did I
gets
say
the
anything that
process.
sounded off? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I might verify, Brad, those other steps have not been initiated at this point, is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Huggins. This is just for the rezoning tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the planning commission?
Good evening, Commission. Steve Chick, 9085 Waverly Road. Quickly, I'll tell you that when I look at what's happening in DeSoto, I think we all realize that we're gonna see some development. There's a lot gonna change in DeSoto in the next number of years. When we were looking at those overheads and we were looking at those arrow views up here, and we're trying to see if this fits, you have to really ask, does it fit? Because you're talking about putting multifamily housing with a 60-foot buffer on the east side that is literally maybe the width of a lot we're talking about here, away from people who have built and developed and contributed to this community for 20 and 30 years. And myself being one of those. I grew up in this community. So, what's that?
We pay for these people up here.
Sure. Well, and to be honest, they don't get paid, and that's good. I mean, we look. I appreciate.
Volunteering, so.
From my standpoint, I appreciate the beating that you guys take on controversial subjects. But I'll go on to say a couple of things. First of all, when you look at the fact that this property is 60 feet and we're going to build 80 single-family homes, 6 apartment buildings, and a hotel and 5 other commercial structures on the comparable area surrounding it, on 60 acres, you're going to have 30 homes. We all own a couple acres each. And so it's a drastic change in the use. And the sentiment that this has been vacant for the last 20 or 30 years is absolutely false. This has been agricultural. This has been used for cattle, but it's not been vacant. So, the other thing that I think is important here is that I think that when I look at this, and I'm not speaking for everybody here, I'm going to speak what I think is real. When I look at the proposed C2 and some of this other area, it fits with the highway, okay? I'm highly concerned about the fact that we've got large lot development that, and a neighborhood certainly fits. And even if it's a little more dense than what we already have existing, we totally understand that. But I'm concerned about multifamily in an area that really wasn't. And the developers built properties that were residential and not multifamily. And so I think that it's concerning to me that we're going to put multifamily bordering large lot development that's been established, and most of us have been here and providing support and both financially and in spirit to the city of DeSoto for many years. So, and I would say that, you know, I've seen a lot of development here. I've gone to school in DeSoto since the end of 2nd grade or the beginning of 3rd grade. So I was educated here. I moved back here to raise my family and to be a part of the community, and I'm happy to do that. But I question whether multifamily in this setting really fits. And I hope that you guys really take a look at the map around this and ask, does multifamily fit with our large lot development? It's largely rural around there. We don't even have improved roads. You know, and there are a lot of things that need to be taken into account beyond the rezoning. When we get to those things, I can tell you we have watershed issues. My neighbor and I have a watershed issue between us, and we keep an eye on it all the time, but changing the topography could enhance that problem. And so there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account. So I'll keep it brief, but what I think was most important for me to say is that when you ask yourselves, does this fit with the surrounding community who's already invested in this community, the answer is specifically with multifamily is no. The rest of it, I don't have a beef with, but the multifamily concerns me highly.
Well said.
Hi, Frank Weinhold, 8690 Waverly Road. And I would say from the zoning, the biggest proposal that I object to would be R3. That's just too many people. And with me being on Waverly Road, I'm the back door. I'm the shortcut. Everyone's going to use that road. And this already was a proposal that we used funds available years ago to widen the road in Waverly. And the residents did not want it. We want the nature of that to remain the same. That was their vote at the time, and it was kept that way. There are people that walk on that road, enjoy that path, and that's why they moved there. For that neighborhood, the R3 would totally change that. Waverly would be, looking at the map, would be their access to that zoning for the multifamily. So I think to be brief, or even more brief, that this came up in the past, that the residents along Waverly did not want to change the nature of that road. This zoning would change that nature, would increase the traffic, and it changes the nature of the neighborhood. Right now, it's a pleasant neighborhood to go through, going either through Explorers Trail or Waverly Road. Very nice houses, very nice lots, and this would change everything. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mark Kennedy, 30412 Explorers Trail. I am the Homeowners Association President for Country Creek Estates, and I believe I can speak on most of the homeowners' behalf, that we explicitly do not want the R3 or any multi-family zoning in this area. Specifically with the Waverly tie-in, this is going to create from my understanding, this multifamily is going to have 500 unit apartment complex. That is going to increase traffic tremendously, and the amount of traffic flow that's going to go out onto Kill Creek is, especially during peak traffic times, and with this, because it is family, we're going to have tons of kids going to school. They're going to be seeking alternative routes than being all forced to be dumped out onto Kill Creek. So with that Waverly tie-in, being on Explorers Trail, everybody on Waverly is just going to be inundated with everyone getting dumped out onto 83rd and any other form. It's very limited access. We all have very large properties. They're all within, upper 6 and 7 figure homes, and we all have a very large amount of taxes, and specifically, what we pay, for our schools and whatnot. That's we're going to be shouldering the brunt of that until with all of this additional load, and we have for years. We can't get away from growth. I'm not opposed to growth by any stretch. It's just this type of growth is not. It's not going to happen, and if we have anything to say about it. So we would appreciate that you would deny this in your vote this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, can I approach?
Of course.
So my wife and I, this is Glenn Robinson. I live at 9065 Waverly Road. We've lived at this address for 25 plus years. We've seen proposals come and go, and much like the gentleman before us, we've seen a lot of these protested by the residents. We've seen this proposal to widen the road. We've seen a proposal to build 15 homes across from my residence. and several others. But what I want to do to capitalize on that is I brought the information from the previous, if you could pass that down, from previous proposals to widen the road and to develop even 15 homes on a 20-acre lot that have been voted down by the residents of our neighborhood. In that 25 years, I've seen a little bit of a de-escalation of the traffic signage, almost like we're stepping back away and letting it be more rural. For instance, what I mean by that is at the end of Waverly Road in Corliss, when I first moved, there was a stop sign there. It has since been removed many years ago. Any weight limit signs for heavy traffic trucks, they've all been removed. I'm getting a feeling almost as it's been de-escalated over time. Most recently, what I'd say is the allowance of recreational vehicles by permitting that's allowed, and I mean by side-by-sides, golf carts, mini bikes, etc., that travel this road all the time by its citizens and good friends of mine. And that's let alone the families that I see every night that are on a walk after a hard day's work to de-escalate their tension, walking around that neighborhood. On March 24th presentation, I watched this, the presentation by Mr. Schramm, and I felt the hesitation in his presentation for this site and some of the things that they're going to have to endure to make this work. I also noted his terminology that this is a product to him and that it doesn't currently meet DeSoto zoning standards or the comprehensive plan. My friends and neighbors would love for you guys to help us ensure proper traffic studies are done. We're hearing little about Waverly and traffic studies, but you have evidence there of some of the stuff that some of the staff has put together previously. And I'd like for you to review that and just do what you can to make sure that this is done properly and that all traffic studies are vetted and that this is something that works for everybody, okay, and not just the developer. Because this, to him, is a product, but it's our homes, our lives, okay? Yes.
Hi, my name is Robin Neal. I live at 9060 Waverly. That was in the notification zone where I previously lived. I was also on a planning and zoning board, so I understand and respect the job you're trying to do in weighing everybody's desires and wants, wishes of residents and the wants of developers and the needs of the community. But I would like to point out some issues with the comprehensive plan that you guys have online. It's coding all of the surrounding lots as medium density for the future land use. I don't think any of these people plan on tearing down their single-family residence on estate lots and putting in a medium density dwelling. I think the mixed use isn't appropriate in that area, given that it's surrounded by low-density residential. The R1 zoning is not developed yet, but it doesn't mean it won't be. There was a house that was lived in there up until 2 or 3 years ago when it was torn down. It wasn't just cattle, it was a farmhouse that people did reside in. Oak Country has single-family residences that back up to K10. Arbor Ridge is developing to the south towards 89th Street. All of those are single-family residences. There's no reason this needs to be such high density. The apartments, I understand development, but I just don't think it fits the area. And so I think with the comprehensive plan, that's a bit misleading to label it that way. And I was asked by someone else to have everybody in this room show of hands for if they would like this to be denied. So I think with that overwhelming display that it's not a popular development. We understand development happens, but R1, R2 would fit the area. And also the staff mentioned that the property has been marketed as commercial. Just because it's marketed that way doesn't mean that's what it should be. I could put out there and market myself as anything, a teacher. That doesn't mean I am or should be. This area, just because it's marked as commercial, doesn't mean it is or that it should be. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Jo Klein. I live at 31001 Explorers Trail, which means my backyard runs along Waverly Road. And if you put a 3-story, I'm going to speak personally first, you put a 3-story apartment, they're looking into my backyard. It doesn't matter if you leave the trees, which you won't, because I know how development happens. They just kind of plow through. We've lived there 24 years. We built that house. We raised our children here. And it is unfathomable to me that you would want to raise an area that has created such a lovely neighborhood. But one of the things that's not being discussed is not just Waverly, but 89th Street, which in itself is a traffic hazard. I mean, if an Amazon truck or a UPS truck or even an emergency vehicle is parked on 89th Street, it immediately becomes a head-on collision waiting to happen. And that has not been discussed at all. It's surprising to me, I don't actually know, obviously, how planning committees work, that traffic studies weren't done first. I would think that would be an important part of whether or not this is a good idea, because why would you put an amusement park where millions of people are going to go through if the street isn't wide enough for 2 people who live in the neighborhood to go through? That doesn't make sense to me. We can't get, as a person who sits on the park board, we can't get sidewalks on those roads for people to enjoy the neighborhood. We do have a lot of walkers, and it's a risk. It's not safe to walk at night because the road isn't wide enough. I understand they don't want the road widened. Perfect. But now you're going to add more traffic for apartment complexes. I think that's crazy, and I think that I understand, again, as a park member, that growth in DeSoto is important, but I think that you have to put DeSoto residents at the top of your list and not the money. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dale Knoll. I'm at 8650 Waverly Road. So I've heard a lot tonight about the spirit of the neighborhood, about traffic. I also heard the developer. We've talked about putting Waverly through, which would drastically increase the traffic on 89th and all the way down Waverly. But I heard the developer say that these kind of developments off of K10 is not an interstate, it's a state highway, not an intrastate highway. But I've heard the developer say that these are common along major highways. But what else is common along major highways are frontage roads. And I don't see anything in this proposed development about a frontage road that would take away the Waverly problem and the 89th Street problem. You go to any major city down in Kansas City, and when these kind of developments are off of major highways, there is a frontage road. But there's the developer did not include anything like that in this proposal. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Maria Nelson. I live at 31555 West 89th Street. We haven't had, I don't know, anybody speak yet who's actually on 89th Street, but our home backs up to the proposed 60-acre development that's under consideration for rezoning. We've lived here for 9 years. And what I'd like to do, I guess, is just describe 89th Street to you a little bit. I don't know if you guys have driven down it and really know this area. You may not. Where I previously lived, I was on the city commission for 5 years. So I know you have a lot of information coming at you, but what we would rely on in city commission, obviously, was the documents and plans we have in here. I just want to be clear that our comprehensive use plan that was put out in 2022 shows this area, my home included, as medium density residential. And I live on 12 acres with horses, chickens, dogs, cats, children on the property. It's not medium density, it's low density. And I think that it's very similar to all of my neighbors up and down 89th Street. And in the comprehensive plan, if it's marked as medium density, to the naked eye looking at it, it might make sense to put mixed use next to that, but that's not what this is. So it's just not a fit with the current neighborhood. And, you know, I know that I'm all for growth and development, and I know that we desperately need single family owned housing here in DeSoto. So I don't understand why we would be looking to put multifamily developments into this location. Once you vote to rezone it, it can become anything. So they're saying it's going to be single family owned homes, and that sounds great. And there's these beautiful pictures up there, but there's not discussion about what it's going to do to the rest of the neighborhood if that's not what plan actually comes to fruition. So I did listen to the March 21st council presentation on this topic from Grada. It was not the same one that we got tonight. There was a lot more in it. There was a lot about where the sewer is going to go, a lot more things that are going to affect people in the neighborhood. And for the 6 council members at that time, it seemed to me, listening to it, were of the opinion that the comprehensive plan needs to be revisited in relation to the proposal for various reasons. But I just think that it really would be premature to rezone this and have us kind of have all bets off for what happens in it next. So my ask is that the Planning Commission votes no today for the information presented. And I guess that one thing I also picked up from that 21st meeting was that the mayor said something about the Lexington Avenue being the McDonald's exit, was the words he used. And I can tell you, I don't want ours to be the apartment exit, because that's what you'll see.
My name is Bill Coppin. I live at 8488 Waverly Road. I've been in front of the variance committee before. This gentleman here helped me get a variance. I spent $150,000 building my dream shop. And my wife and I moved to DeSoto 2 years ago from Leawood because we wanted, I wish I'd have grown up here, honestly, but you know, better late than never. Because we wanted the feel of the area we live in, Waverly Road and the surrounding areas. And I don't see how this development, you know, selfishly, it's not going to help my property values no matter what the developer says. Turning Waverly Road into K7 is not going to help me. It's not going to help anybody on Waverly Road. The residents that live here, we drive the speed limit. All the people from the battery plant, all the people that are cutting through because of the construction, and we understand it, they drive down Waverly Road 55 miles an hour. It's just the way it is. And I understand that, you know, we all drive slower in our neighborhoods because we don't want to hit any of our neighbors' kids. I'm opposed to that. Everybody that I've talked to is opposed to it. I would have moved to Lenexa or Olathe if that's what if I wanted to live next to a multifamily development. And nothing wrong with, people need apartments at all stages of their lives, and that's great. It doesn't fit that property. And this nonsense about, well, it's a highway. I don't know to Cedar Creek dumping that shit. I'm sorry. I don't know to Cedar Creek dumping that in their backyard. We are DeSoto. We're not Lenexa. We're not Olathe. So I thank you for your time. I love this city. I can't wait to live here 30 years, God willing. And thank you for all you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Marty Klein, 31001 Explorers Trail. You may have heard from my wife earlier. I couldn't get up here when she was up, so I'm separate. I tell you what, worked for municipalities in my past. Familiar with zonings, rezonings. I'm familiar with use plans as well. One thing that bothers me here is I think that the city should, just word of advice, make submittals adhere to your code and keys for color usage for zones. I noticed that my residential was listed as a pink zone, right? but it matches that high-use R3 zone that's on that plan right there. That's a subliminal for you, just to say, oh, well, I'm matching up these colors. Looks good. Well, it doesn't really, to me, it sticks out. But if you can have those match up, that'll help people who don't really understand what an R3 versus an R2 or R1 really is. Also, that plan, well, I'll tell you, what I got in the mail wasn't an official notice. I got verbiage that spelled out Clearview City?
Yeah, that's right.
Clearview City had a map of what was in my backyard. I took a glance at the map and I said, wow, let me just read what it's about. And I read and it said Clearview City, and I put it aside. And that wasn't an official notice. I don't feel like I was notified in time, personally. I don't think you guys did your due diligence there. That's my opinion. And I don't know how many other residents that happened to, but it did to me. So problem number two. The other thing is, the map I got doesn't match that map, so I don't know what's going on there, but the map I had showed that Waverly was to be extended up until right about where the creek crosses underneath Waverly and heads off northwest tangent. That one there doesn't show that. It shows that the R3 goes all the way, almost all the way up to Explorers Trail. Discrepancies. Don't like those at all. I read into that, like I'm sure you should. But anyway, I'm also looking at two big rectangles that are 3-story high-use apartment complexes looking into my backyard, like my wife explained. Looking into the Johnson's backyard. Chris Johnson, Keller Williams Realty, you may know her, but she's my neighbor. And I know that the city has to grow. I get it. It has to happen. It should happen. But are you familiar with Topeka? You ever driven through Topeka? You know how brown it is in Topeka? You know, when you drive through Topeka, it just looks like something is off. Take a look at their zoning plans and what happened the years before. There was no plan. They put things willy-nilly all over the place, and it amounted to a big cluster. And I don't want to see that happen in our own backyard either, literally my backyard, but in the city of DeSoto, which I, like the rest of the residents here, happen to like it here in DeSoto. So when I see that we have those commercial businesses going in, high-use occupancy going in, and I'm surrounded with this plat, surrounded by residentials on 3 sides, and then a highway. If you're going to build something like that, how about go over the other side of the highway where you just have large pastures with hardly any development? You're only dealing with maybe one house that you have to deal with instead of all of us who have loads of money invested in our houses, loads of money in taxes coming to you every year. And we've done this for 30 some odd years, most of us. And the rest of us would like to continue doing that, unless I'm wrong. But cutting the street through too, that's a whole nother topic. If I had to do it, I would draw a lower residence line between the R1s that are us and the R1s that are above us, above this plot, and make it more of a blend, if you would, and keep that R3 away from everybody else. Did I run out of time?
Yep.
Sorry.
The clock here.
I had a lot more, but maybe I'll just show up another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm old, so I had to stay sitting down. My name's Dave Ogilvy. I live at 8879 Waverly. Lived there about 10 years. One thing that hasn't been brought, I had several items to bring up. However, I think they're more appropriate for when we have the R1 and R2 hearing. One of the things that hasn't been discussed is crime. And as a retired police officer, when you have apartment complexes, it's not the choice of the people who live around that complex, or even sometimes the people who live in the complex, but they're breeding grounds for crime. If you're going to shop, where do? You go to the store that has a large selection. So as a car burglar or a guy who wants to steal cars, he's going to go to a place where he has a good choice in what he breaks into or what he steals. So that's one thing to consider if you're going to approve R3, is what's it going to do to the neighborhood? And that crime will bleed over into the surrounding neighborhood too. So I think that that's an important thing to think about. Single family, we all expect development. The battery plant. The only thing we didn't expect is our governor stood at the battery plant and said, your taxes won't go up if this is approved. My property tax on my house this year went up $125,000. We did absolutely nothing to improve our home. Now, I got it reduced $38,000 going to the state hearing, but at the same time, it's still up $85,000, $90,000 in a year. So that's the other question, is the arterial roadways, and I know that's been brought up. They need to be improved. They needed improvement before this complex or before this hearing, and they haven't been done. And the question is, who's going to pay for that? I got a feeling I know the answer to that. I don't want to say it, but I think I know what the answer is, and that's a concern too. So I'll leave it at that. I'll see you at the next hearing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tabitha Jurgensmeyer. I live at 8890 Waverly Road. I'm not nearly as prepared, as well-spoken as all of you, but I did want to get up and just say a few things. I moved to DeSoto in 2021. I built my house, and I did move here from Gardner. I preface that to say that I lived there from 2007 to 2021, and I endured the intermodal and all of the growth. And when your infrastructure is not in place, and what a hazard and headache that traffic really became, it's ultimately why I moved here. It's why we picked the lot in DeSoto. We looked for 2 years before we decided where we were going to go. So my ask when it comes to any of this is just really, really consider the traffic implications that you're going to see. I'm a runner. I have a dog. I walk my dog every day. I'm on those roads constantly. And I'm very aware of what traffic can do for the residents in the area. So that's all I wanted to throw out there for you guys.
Thank you.
Howdy. My name's John Pollock. I live at 87th and Corliss, approximately 8749. We moved to DeSoto about 22 years ago, and like a lot of people here, because we wanted to get in a community. I live in Overland Park, and while it's well-managed, a very well-run city, no matter what they try to tell you, it's not a community. Okay, it's a big city. I lived in Kansas City, Missouri before that, and I see you guys as my neighbors and as part of the community. I live with you guys, okay? For full disclosure, I would like to know if anybody here who I consider my friends and neighbors live within a half mile of Waverly Road either side. Does anybody? Yeah. Good, okay, you got a perspective. Sure. I live just on Corliss. And like I said, I just like to see that DeSoto stay a community. And when you start bringing in hundreds of people into a small area, that's not a community, okay? And you look at the areas of the city where they have real high density housing, you guys get around in your car in the city, you know what's out there, you know. This R3 thing just doesn't make sense, you know, and I don't live as close as these people do, but it'll affect Corliss, you know. There's gonna be all kinds of traffic, so please keep it community, that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Thukas. I live on 30553 West 88th Terrace off Corliss. I'm neighbors with John, so I want to just extend a little bit of comments on what John said as far as the community. The community we had before it was approved for the battery plant to come in. It's not the community that's going to move forward. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, you've let the battery plant come in. I'm not going to argue yay or nay against that, but it's here and it's here to stay. Additionally, what I heard earlier in the March meeting was the developer talking about affordable housing. And now I see what affordable housing is, 50-foot lots. Okay. I won't even go to R3. I think that's been hit, and I agree with all that. So I've listened to all my fellow people around talk about how this is not appropriate for the area that we are talking about. I completely agree with that. With that said, each and every one of you probably have to be under a huge amount of pressure. No different than those in Nevada when their big battery plant came in. There was warnings that came out all over what was going to happen. And I'm going to expect it's probably a little bit of that duplication starting here. The pressure's got to be mounting. The battery plant's coming. What I want to try to get across from each and every one of you is that when you go home tonight and everything you've listened to, you kind of soak up and take it with what we said, is that we have the chance to set the bar high. We have the chance to do that. If setting the bar high is bringing in 50-foot lots, I think you set the bar pretty low. So with that said, I want you all to think, and please take this seriously. You're under a huge amount of pressure. I can't even imagine. I wouldn't want your jobs. But don't bend under the pressure. I know you may have governor pressure, you may have state pressure, you may have whatever pressure. But these are the people that you're trying to serve, not them. And with that said, I appreciate your time.
Wade went to sleep. Greg Hudson, 31455 West 89th Street. One of my neighbors is here. I'm not going to be able to outdo her speech. I live on 5.65 acres. It butts up to R2 and the creek, and the California Trail cuts through there. And a couple things I wasn't addressed tonight. What about the one-lane bridge on 89th Street? It's a mess. I mean, I can handle it, but two cars can't get through there safely. I'm not bragging here, but I used to live up at 112th and Kill Creek. My wife and I built a custom home on 10 acres. That was 25 years ago. So I always considered myself a DeSotian, but you know, that's county. And we decided to downsize, and that's why we bought a lot and put in another custom home. And it's a high 6-digit figure home. And in the next year or two, it's gonna be $1 million. I know it, but I don't want that stuff behind me. I guess I'm taking it personal, but you bring in those apartment complexes, where are the children gonna play? They're gonna trespass onto my property and play in the woods like all kids do. And there's a big dump down there that's been used for years along the creek canal, and there are water wells, uncovered water wells on adjacent properties. So it's something to think about. I don't want little kids to get hurt. And you talk about, God, all these people in here from living along Waverly, I'm overwhelmed. I won't drive on Waverly Road when it snows or it has ice. Too high of a crown, bar ditches. And we got bar ditches on 89th Street. And you gotta be darn careful. And I don't want to get into speeding cars, but people do speed. And the residents that don't speed, you all know what you do. You wave at each other, don't you? Darn right. Yeah. So I guess I'll shut up. But I wanted to address the bridge issue more than anything else, 'cause it's going to have to be tore out. 4 upscale homes on 2 and 3 acre tracts, I believe. I don't know if a road's going to come out on 89th Street, but if that happens, it's really going to double it up. So, like you all just think about this, and this isn't a threat. I plan on living here until I'm dead and going down to the cemetery. But if this glob comes out to my backyard, I'm probably going to sell my house. And that wasn't something that my wife and I ever talked about doing. So I guess we'll let the chips fall where they do. So thank you all for your time. And I recognize a few faces here. I wasn't going to speak, but you kind of motivated me.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I know many of you. I've been here for almost 25 years.
Sorry,
Worked with
name
the
and
city
address for
over the
record.
years.
Name and address for the record, if you don't mind.
Anyway, I'm Bill Sedgwick. I live on 30375 Explorers Trail.
Thank you.
I am concerned about the development, not because I don't want development, I really do, but I don't want the density. We live on Explorers Trail, and it will become part of the exit from all of that property. I've been told in the past when I've asked the city about improving Corliss or Explorers Trail or Waverly, well, we'll maintain them. We're not going to improve them. But it'll have to be improved if there's going to be that kind of population and that kind of population's use. Anyway, I don't want to repeat what's been said. I'm opposed to the high density. I have no problem with you turning that into housing, but not for multiple families. That's inappropriate. And 50-foot lots is too small. Start over. Think it again.
Hello, my name is Tracy Smith, and I just wanted to get up and support all the Waverly folks and Explorers Trails. I live in Oak Country Estates. I'm at 8950 Oak Country Lane. My husband and I moved here about 3 years ago from Western Shawnee, and I have had friends over there that still live there and say, why would you move out there? I go, why would I ever move back here? And that is to absolutely get away from all the crazy, the traffic, the hustle, the bustle. That's why we love it out here. My husband was not able to be here tonight. He always has a lot of great ideas, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. One of his great ideas one time that I thought he had totally lost it was we back up to Kill Creek. And he said, we need to build a drawbridge across Kill Creek so we can get over to town someday because the traffic's gonna get too crazy out here. And I'm like, you are nuts. And then I started thinking, just listening tonight with all this traffic, that maybe he knew what he was talking about. I don't know if I'll tell him that I agree with him or not, but that's beside the point. But I was trying to get here tonight, and it took me a good 4 minutes to get out of Oak Country onto Kill Creek just to turn left. And I just can't imagine what it's gonna be like when the battery plant is here. We know it's gonna be here. I'm not gonna talk about that because it is what it is. But if we put additional housing and all those apartments in there, I don't even know how we would get out of our house unless we had a drawbridge. So I implore all of you to just please put yourself into all of the positions of the people that have land that backs up to this place and say, would you want this? Would you want to look outside and see this? Again, not opposed to development, just to this type of development. Single family homes with larger lots that complement nicely to those that it backs up towards, that would be one thing. But this is just, it's not the best thing. It's not the best thing for us. So thank you all for your time and listening to all of us, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. John Scolat, 31305 West 89th Street. Everybody's taken all my keynotes that I've shared. The one thing I do have a question of, and it's for you guys to ask, on 6 3-story, is that what we're talking, apartment buildings? Is the DeSoto Fire Department prepared for those buildings? Do we have the equipment to get that high to take care of those? Or are we going to invest in another $2.5 million fire truck just to get that? The roads are a concern. They're not wide enough. They got to do this, that, and the other. There's going to be over 1,000 cement trucks down 89th, down Waverly, to build all these houses. Not only are the roads not wide enough, they're going to be garbage when that's done. Only thing I haven't heard discussed, I think the support from the community on this is phenomenal. Thank you guys for taking the brunt of the blow. Hopefully, we make the right decision. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Mia Dolman, 31725 West 91st Street. I lived here about 25 years, and my backyard is going to be all those apartments. They're zoning for residential for 60 house, 1 acre. I have 1 acre with the house. I don't think anything's wrong with that, because right now, the planning is they're going to take my creek or my neighbor and my house in between, going to the sewer. It's going to change all habitat of the nature of the DeSoto. So with that, I hope you guys take a big consideration. We like to keep the small community just like everybody else here. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Save the best for last. I'm Duke Nealon. I live at 30820 West 90th Street, DeSoto, Kansas. I've been in DeSoto, lived in DeSoto for over 75 years. My 60th high school reunion was last weekend. So I've been around here for a long time. I've seen a lot of changes. And I look at Waverly, and I look at the condition that it's in, and the deep ditches, and it's plumb scary to drive up and down that street in the wintertime that you might slide off because you'd never get out of it. That Waverly is like a fly ash base road. And the concrete trucks and so forth are going to destroy it. And I don't think it's going to be maintained after this happens if you dump all that traffic onto Waverly. I think somebody suggested that we needed a frontage road next to 10 Highway. I think that's the only answer. I sold 1.25 acres of land to the city for $1. 28 years ago, so the city could get up to the water tower to put cell towers on it. They were supposed to maintain 90th Street. 28 years, I've never seen them give it any kind of upgrades, chip and seal or whatever. It's got 2-inch wide cracks in it with grass growing in it now. And I just imagine we'll be seeing the same thing on Waverly. This is going to destroy the value of our land. We've got nearly 10 acres with a nice home on it right now. And I don't see how this could help us. Please consider all of my neighbors and their wishes. Thank you.
Thank
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the few moments of time to chat with you. My name is Shannon Billinger. I'm at 31309 West 89th. And I just wanted to make sure it was known that everyone that lives to the left, to the right of me, along 89th Street, we're all here in representation of really the concerns of the R3 aspect here. I don't think any of us, I'm going to speak for everyone along the road, hopefully everyone agrees, but we understand there's going to be development. We understand there's going to be growth. And it's a great opportunity to put single-family homes behind us. If we start putting in apartments, especially at the density that's proposed, this is going to cause serious concern from a crime perspective. I mean, the roads are one thing. We're kind of talking about the roads in and out. Roads can be corrected. I'm really worried about the tromping through it's my backyard that backs up to the land. Really concerned about the safety. I live there, my wife and I, my 5-year-old daughter. There's a lot of unknowns. I just ask you to kind of put yourself in our position. Development's fine, lots are fine for homes, but the R3 and even the commercial to an extent is very concerning. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm Debbie Harrington. I live at 30845 West 90th Street. I've lived here 24 years, almost 25 years. My family, me, my son, and my daughter live on the whole south side of 90th Street. And I would hate to have, it is so cool to get up in the morning and see 5 deer standing out in your backyard. Or see a raccoon run across your thing. I know they're not good, but it's cool to see. It's good to see wildlife. I've got an owl that I hear almost every night. And if you start tearing these trees down and stuff, all this stuff's going to go away. Not to mention the fact that if there's snakes in those areas, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go into our houses. And my son will move. But we also, the crime part, my son and I drag race. My husband passed away 4 years ago, and that was their big hobby. And we have a big toter sitting on our lot. We have a trailer. There's other people that have totes. The chicks have a tote with a trailer. And you bring people in and they see that, they're going to break into them. And we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in our cars and our equipment that we don't want people to tear up. And we moved here simply because we had a heating and cooling shop in Shawnee, and it got broken into twice. And my husband said, I want my stuff where I know where it's at. And so that's why we moved here and built a shop that we have. I also own antique cars, and people, you know, I think that was people that broke into our shop in Shawnee were people that knew what were in there. They knew exactly what to take. They took our tools, they took our trucks, but they didn't bother the race car. So it was somebody that knew the race car was important to us, but not everybody knows that. They just see dollar signs. So I'm against this. I mean, even though like I said, my son and I own a heating and cooling company, and having 80 houses come into this community is a lot of houses and a lot of traffic. And where are you going to put the kids for school? My daughter's a kindergarten teacher at Mize Elementary, and they are full. And if you build another school, that's just going to add to our taxes. Yeah. So I'm against this too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, I think our online participant wants to speak.
Great.
Yep.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mark McGee, 31315 West 89th Street. You already heard from Shannon and Greg, my two close neighbors. And you know, my wife and I and our kids have lived there for 25 years, and you're not going to hear anything from me that you haven't heard already. But just adding to the pile, really the R3 and the C2 is just, it's not the character of our neighborhoods. It's just not. And with the high density and then the commercial and both of those are just asking for crime to bleed into our neighborhoods. I think it's well published in many, you know, the injury and violence reports. Those types of things just bring in a higher 5 to 10 times level higher of crime than we see now, and it's not good. So that was my spiel, and like I said, nothing new that you haven't heard from a lot of these nice people that we live around. And we you know, single dwellings on bigger lots is great. It's within the character of our neighborhood, and I urge you to make that decision and keep DeSoto like it is, DeSoto. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jack Richenberger. I live at 30544 Explorers Trail. And my family's lived there for 24 years now. We were one of the first lots to be developed that when George Hagan decided to divide that all up. Everybody's covered what I would want to say or felt I needed to say, so I won't go down that path. But back to process or procedure. When do you do the traffic study?
So traffic study would come in connection with the plat.
Either the preliminary plat or site plan.
Preliminary plat or site plans. Preliminary plat would be for the R2. The site plan would be for the C2 and the R3. But that's when you'll do the traffic study to determine whether or not they can build what they're actually proposing to build. Everything you've got here is just conceptual because it's just whether the land use is appropriate for it.
And so what will you decide after this meeting? I mean, we're talking about rezoning, correct?
Correct.
And you'll vote to rezone after this meeting?
So we will recommend either approval or denial of the rezoning to the city council. The city council then will hear this same discussion and make their own determination based on that, but they'll take into account the recommendation of the planning commission.
It just seems to me like you're kind of getting the cart ahead of the horse.
Well, let me just address at least that issue. The rezoning is not a determination of what will be built on the property. It's whether that this is a particular use. You've all made great arguments as to whether or not these are appropriate uses. So I think you've gotten your say on that, and I think we'll have the discussion about that. As far as what actually gets built on it, that's going to be determined based upon what the actual developer comes back with a plan. There'll be many other opportunities to talk about that, and I mean, I think you've all made great points on that. So.
Yep, my concern there is that you're talking about rezoning and making a decision tonight, tomorrow, I don't know when you're going to do that, and you haven't done a traffic study yet.
Yeah.
I just think you're getting the cart ahead of the horse. You know, I went through the podcast of your March 24th meeting when the developer did his presentation, and you know, I'll be the first to admit, you know, where we live on Explorers Trail, there's a number of people that are going to be impacted considerably more than we are with this. The sewer line is just unbelievable to me what it's going to do. The other thing is the frontage road's been talked about here a couple of times. A couple of people brought that up. And to me, you take the pressure off Waverly Road, and if you, instead of putting a through street through this, make it a horseshoe. Let traffic, I realize the fire department has to have two places to be able to come into and out of a development. Just make it a horseshoe and have traffic come into this thing off Kill Creek and have it exit onto Kill Creek. Don't let that street go through. Then you don't have any issues with Waverly. I know a lot of people, well, I walk it, I run it. It's not built for that traffic. It'll be junk before they're done. A concern that I have is that people are gonna, once Waverly's trash, or people get tired of trying to get onto Kill Creek, they're gonna get on Waverly, they're gonna turn east onto Explorers Trail. They're gonna take Explorers Trail up to Corliss, they're gonna jump across K10, they're gonna come back west on 95th Street to get on Kill Creek, and get on K10 that way. So I'm not naive enough, I would do it. I mean, sometimes that's what I do when I know there's gonna be traffic or there's construction or whatever. But my main concern is we're talking about rezoning this thing, and we really haven't done all the legwork to see, at least ballpark, what it's gonna do as far as traffic is concerned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So we will have two other public hearings tonight dealing with the R2 and the C2. If everyone feels that they've had their opportunity as to the R3, I would suggest closing the public hearing on this and giving everybody at least a 5-minute break, then coming back and doing the presentation on the R2. I don't mean to cut anybody off, but yes.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Adam Perkins, 31850 West 89th Street. The R3, I live on 89th. Live right near that one-lane bridge. R3 is going to just make that traffic insane. I don't like that at all. K10, bridges have been shut down, so everybody takes 83rd. I don't know if you guys have been down 83rd lately, but it's busy. Bunch of construction, all that. So I just think R3 could be, just not R3. Maybe single family homes. R2 could get changed to larger lots. That's what's going to be around there. I know progress is going to happen, so let's just do it the right way.
Thank you. If there is no other public comment on the R3, I would propose closing the public hearing, but I'll, like a good auctioneer, going once. I suggest we close the public hearing and take a 5-minute break.
A second.
Agreed? Thank you.
Dale.
Hurtling towards the concrete base first, just like so I did the only thing that I could do. I just like the arms out. No, it's shattered by
Already at the top of the world.
Yes. I was debating whether I would like to call our meeting back to order.
No, I need to stand. I think we all get up and say the same thing again. Or two.
Call the meeting back to order. Thank you. Having concluded the public hearing on the R2 application, I would entertain a motion to table the application until the end of the meeting.
I make a motion we
The R3, I'm sorry.
R3.
Go win.
Till the end of our discussion here. We'll move now to the next zone.
Why?
It's the same procedure as he talked about at the beginning.
I know, but why table it? Why not go ahead and discuss it now that everyone's here?
They're going to a tax.
I know, but why table it? Everyone here would like to hear, a lot of these people might have to leave, you know?
Well, I don't, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
This was an applicant on one particular tract that's got three different applications, so it
Why
really.
table this one section?
Table it so we can have the next public hearing, have that discussion, then we'll do the next one, have that discussion, then we will vote. It's a 3-application process.
I would move we move the vote to the end of the meeting and continue with a public hearing on R2.
Second, I hear you. Second.
The motion has been made to table table the discussion on the application for the R3 until the end of the discussion. We'll do all three of them together for the discussion, correct?
That's my motion.
So moved and seconded?
Yes, second.
Any discussion on that? No. Roll call.
Manson.
Yes.
Templin.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Medoff.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. With that, then, I would like to begin the discussion of the application to change the portion of the tract from R1 to R2. I would again ask Brad to give us a staff report, which I'm assuming can be very brief.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chairman. As you've heard and what I said in the previous presentation, there is very little change between the recommendation from staff on the R2 versus the R3 and also the C2. I did want to make note that, as Commissioner Milburn pointed out, the recommendation for the R2 should include a traffic study as part of the preliminary plat process. So if we get to that point, I'd like you to consider that amendment.
Thank you. Does any of the commissioners have any questions for Brad as to the R2 portion of this application? Seeing none, I would open up the public hearing and invite comment on the R2 portion of the application. We certainly don't feel like you need to make another record. We've got it from the first, but if there's something specifically on the R2, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Frank White, 8690 Waverly Road. And as I look at this and wonder how to transition, the current surrounding neighborhoods into a development where you could have maybe a little bit more density, and still have the commercial. It makes more sense to me for the blue section to remain R1, for the pink to be R2, and for the neon green to be C2. That just allows a little bit more of a transition, and then the Waverly access still is very disturbing. But that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria Nelson, 31555 West 89th Street. Just wanted to say I don't feel any differently about the R2 than I do about the R3 as R2 is currently defined, because if we zone it R2, that can be multifamily housing, duplexes, basically the entire conversation that we've already had with R3 applies to R2 no differently. So I just wanted to be clear that my recommendation was that this entire area stays R1 in line with the area behind it. And I also had a question. I tried to raise my hand when Brad was up here, but in March, at the March 21st council meeting, Grata said that if the council didn't meet these 80% tax incentive requests, which was not inside the comprehensive plan, that their application was dead in the water, but that has progressed. So I just wondered what conversations have happened since then that would have changed them to kind of pull back what they said at that meeting.
No clue.
Okay.
That's the city council area.
That's
Okay,
not
we'll
what we
table
do.
it for that. That was all, thanks.
Do that.
Dale Knoll, 8650 Waverly Road. So how many houses would R2 go into that R2 blue area there?
So the zoning is for the area, and it's based upon how the streets are gonna get laid out, and in the R2 zoning, one change that's recently been made.
And just to clarify, you reduced the lot size for the R2.
The R2 has been reduced from, it was 60 feet to 50. 65 to 50.
It was 65 to 50.
It was 65 to 50, and that
So
was,
considerably reduced it. Yeah.
it was a point of discussion.
Yeah.
But
I'm
that
just,
was the
I'm just
decision that
asking
was
the
made.
question.
Yeah. So the R2, the idea behind that was to create more affordable housing opportunities because it is increasing.
So again, how many houses are we talking about R2?
Well, it depends on the street configuration.
Right, I mean, on that blue plan, there's about 80 lots. Now, once again, it's not the final, but that's a good number to work from.
I would assume it'd be hard to do more than that, considering the topography.
So I kind of am also in favor of that entire area remaining in R1 in the pattern of the neighborhood that is currently there. Obviously, we've got a lot of R1 folks here, so I think everybody would support that. But I also want to bring up the frontage road piece again. Because even if that goes to R2, you'd still be looking at 80 houses or more worth of cement trucks down Waverly and 89th Street, I assume, correct?
Well, as far as where the truck traffic is gonna go when this thing gets built.
Well, there's no other place for it, so it would have to be either Waverly or 89th.
Or Kill Creek.
Right, and again, so I want to bring up the frontage road piece, because there was no, this is not really made for a tall guy. So the frontage road, there's no frontage road there in this plan, but if a frontage road was put in and a horseshoe was made around that, and that would at least then reduce the traffic, if not keep it all off of 89th and Waverly, correct?
Don't know. That's gonna have to be what the plat is gonna be about.
Right, but with a horseshoe and no direct access to Waverly or 89th, it would reduce it.
Certainly if it doesn't have access, it would reduce it. I would agree with that.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to point out, reduce it, if not eliminate it.
Probably so.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Chick, 9085 Waverly. Just a quick point that I want to make very clear when we're talking about this is that I happen to be a fire chief in another area in Johnson County. I'm heavily involved in development and understand. I'm in many discussions related to tax increment financing and all those other things that are related to development. So when I look at this, I think what we ought to remember when we're talking about rezoning is that there are other properties in our county that have been rezoned and then sold off multiple times because the thresholds for financing weren't met, other things. So you rezone this R2, and that opens it up to duplexes and all kinds of stuff. And though it says it's going to be 80 single-family homes right now, what could happen is that Grotto may not get what they want in incentives, and this thing gets sold, and now we got a bunch of duplexes going in because it's rezoned. And so that's my concern with the R2. I think that the amount of investment that we've made in this community around that to rezone that as R2 is very high risk, and R3 is even worse. But those are my concerns with those two issues. Thank you.
Yeah.
Duke Nealon, 30820 West 90th Street. Maybe you could educate us a little bit on this R2 and its 50-foot lots now. Is that like a single driveway, single garage? Because I've seen this down in the Meadows where you have a lot of housing with single driveways and then everybody's parking out in the street. And then it's a big cluster when it comes to maybe a fire truck having to go down through there. I'm opposed to small lot sizes where you can't put a double driveway in that the cars all fit in their own driveways and they'll end up in the streets. So anyway, some thought.
Bill Coppin, 8488 Waverly. Just in the interest of time, I'm opposed to changing it to R2 for all the reasons we've said. Show of hands of everybody who's opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Roof, and I live at 31805 West 91st Street. And I go along with what everybody has said here. I've lived here 15 years, and I'm the third house down on 91st off of Kill Creek. So we have the cul-de-sac. So my neighbors have been the few that are here, like Mia that spoke, and some in the back, and a bunch of Black Angus cattle. And the problem I have, of course, I'm opposed, as they said, to R3, and I'm opposed to the R2. I really was told when I bought here, I called City Hall before I bought, and they told me it was all going to be single-family homes, and they said probably higher end. So that's why I bought here. So then you look at where C2 comes up, and that's right behind like 4 of our properties, 4 of my neighbors, that are myself and 3 other neighbors. And I understand if there's going to have to be some commercial, at least bring the residential over to take out those first 2 commercial buildings there and bring make it R1 and bring that over there and have the commercial sticking out closer to K10 where it doesn't bother the rest of our neighbors. And so the 4 of us that bought with it being residential, let it be residential and don't be a big lie to us, okay? That's what I'm asking. So I think everybody else has spoken pretty much what I feel, so there it is.
Thank you.
And Chairman, I think Mr. McGee wants to speak on this item as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mark McGee, 31315 West 89th Street. And I'm just sort of doubling what Mrs. Nelson said, which is if you move it to R2, it opens it up to some unknowns, duplexes, family dwellings. And again, the character of DeSoto is the R1, larger lots. 50 is too small. That's just too small. And so again, leave it zoned as R1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Smith again. I would like to say I agree with what these folks are saying about the R2. I've seen townhomes before. You can't pass the cars in the parking lot, or insane. Not a car can fit down the street. Absolutely opposed to that. Also, I think if we could get rid of the C2, there has not been one time that I've tried to get out onto Kill Creek from my neighborhood that I thought I need to get gas immediately, and so I would like to pop over there and get it. How about take this whole thing, eliminate R3, R2, and C2, put C2 down by the battery plant where we're gonna have a lot of folks that need something quick. And yes, if we could have a quick trip, that would be awesome. We don't need a Phillips 66, in just my opinion. But take all this, open this up to nice properties where people can live and establish roots in the community and have it built up like what we are all trying to do and what we want to do. All of this right here is just a quick Band-Aid fix. And I'm afraid that the development group that's trying to come in here and do this, while I understand that they have a job to do and they are trying to make money, I know that they're also getting tax abatements. And so what's going to happen a few years after their tax abatements are all over and they're like, yeah, we're done. And then we're left to deal with this mess. So that's what I would like to say today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Vicki Selzer, 30820 West 90th. And I'd like to follow that up with, I understand the need for the apartments and the duplexes and even the commercial, but is this the place to put it? Does it really fit in? Why, just like the last gal pointed out, why don't you center this more towards the battery plant where you're going to have all this traffic, where people are going to be working, coming in and out, and it just makes more sense to me in the big picture to have it closer to that area where you're going to have the big population. Thanks.
Any other public comments on the R2 application?
Mia Dolman, 31725 West 91st Street. Everybody in my neighborhood has 1 acre with the septic tank. It works really well. So everything's beautiful and natural. So why can't we keep the R1? So 1 acre with the housing, that way nobody has to deal with the sewer system, not tearing down the whole DeSoto, Waverly, everything else. So keep it simple. I know that's part of the growing pain, which is we are willing to put up with the 60 house back there. That is just fine. But I mean, growing pain, what we have to pay, we all pay tax people. And what we have to pay for somebody else to pay, give them more tax break for other people. We need to support our group who lives here already, not the people who wants to come in and tear down the whole DeSoto. Thank you.
Any other public comments on the R2 application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on the R2 application. Again, I might recommend this would be a good time for a tabling of the discussion until the end for all three of them together.
I would move that we table the vote on the R2 application until the end of the meeting.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Schultz.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Manson.
Yes.
Templin.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving then to 5A, the rezoning application to change from R1 to C2. Again, I would recognize Brad, if you want to give us just your thumbnail, at least anything special on the C2 report.
Really, Chairman, there's no changes to the C2 recommendation from city staff. It's been shown as mixed use for quite some time. I think it's an appropriate use on a diamond interchange on K10 Highway in Kill Creek's main entrance to town. It's an arterial road, which is how our intent of the C2 zoning district is defined. Certainly stand for any questions you may have, but I think the comments are accurate and appropriate. Our concern as city staff is traffic and the utilities.
Thank you, Brad. You would take the second point of the conclusion from the R3 zoning, you would add that to this one as well?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Brad? At this point, then I would open up the public hearing for the C2 application. Anyone like to address the Planning Commission on that? We've certainly heard plenty, so you don't feel like you have to, but if you've got something specifically on the C2, something you think we should add to this discussion.
Hello, Mark Kennedy. What is the developer's tax abatement plan? I mean, I understand that that's in the works. Is that for this development?
It is not, and this is a zoning issue.
Okay.
This group doesn't deal with that.
All right,
The city council would deal with that.
Okay, I appreciate
so
that.
Really, whether he gets an abatement or not is not a proper thing for us to even talk about.
I understand.
We just talk about whether it's appropriate use.
With that being said, it's still an issue for us.
Yeah.
And with also any incentives that they get, someone's going to have to make up the difference, i.e. everyone here. Also, I understand that there's a talk of a new tax zone to be developed there where a higher sales tax rate will be imposed on the commercial. And if the C3 goes through, I mean the R3 goes through, there will be a higher tax rate, sales tax rate put in there. So we will be penalized as local residents for the honor of using this new development by paying more taxes. That doesn't set right with me. Also, is there any plans for the interchanges? Are there going to be traffic signals? Are we having turn lanes? What's going to happen to Kill Creek? It's already getting off K10 is perilous, to say the least. Currently, we load that up with additional commercial. That's just going to exacerbate that, excluding any additional residential development. So we're looking at turn lanes, traffic signals, all this. Has that been addressed? And again, what's the cost and who's going to front that? And I realize we all know who that is. So I'd like to see no C1 in this area, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to state my name again?
Please do.
Maria Nelson, 31555 West 89th. The map has been up there most of the time. I just want to state the obvious, which is if you are considering everything that everybody in the room has said tonight about the opposition to the R2 and the R3, then I would not be able to understand why we would even consider approving the C2 at this time, or we have just something totally that doesn't make sense out there. I just also want to make sure that we're on the same page. I don't understand why the commission would vote for something that we've got the majority of the residents surrounding it. I mean, I've been carrying around this map of every single homeowner that's notified with certified mail, circling every single one of them who is going to protest it and is against it. Why would we do that if we know that nobody's for it in this area? Thank you.
Just a quick addition, Glenn Robinson, 9065 Waverly Road. I want to revert back to the March 21st presentation by Mr. Schramm. Quote, towards the end of his presentation, this is what he says: "We have contract now and not sure we have the patience." So with that being said, if we change this zoning now and they dislike the zoning changes, who's to say what goes in there at that point? Do they get upset? Do they change their plan? Do they change the plat? I just want to say that seems like a very audacious statement for somebody coming in to develop in a city and pushing something like this. So, thank you.
Hi, Frank Weinhold again. I had a question on process. In your experience, has the Planning Commission's advice been heeded by the City Council?
Oh, well, they don't have to, all right? So here's what's gonna happen. If we recommend either approval or denial, they're gonna make their own decision based on their analysis. They'll take it into account.
Okay.
What can happen here, as you probably already identified, is if there's a protest petition, that makes it a higher vote for that city council. But they can still vote in favor of it. And so what we do is we simply are an advisory function at this point to determine whether or not legally, sufficiently, they have made the case to say that on the preponderance of the factors that have been analyzed, they're appropriate, this is an appropriate land use. That's really the question.
Thank you so much. So in 2003, when Arbor Ridge went in, they had high density proposals just like this. We had a petition that we went door to door, had more than just surrounded residents, but we had over 1,000 signatures, and those were voters that the City Council had to listen to, and we decreased the density of Arbor Ridge. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just like to read Dale Knoll, 8650 Waverly Road, just like to reiterate what was said earlier about, if we're going to deny R3 and R2, why would we approve commercial? And also right across the street from that commercial development is Kill Creek Barn with goats and every time I drive by there, they got something else out there running around. So unless we're going to put like an old country buffet in that C2 area that would fit there, then it's probably not going to work.
Mary Jo Klein, 31001 Explorers Trail. I just want to also kind of bring to the attention that if C2 goes in, that land that circles around Explorers Trail is going to be lit up like a Christmas tree. And you could not leave all those trees there and still not be blocked. I'm also really concerned about gas stations and truck stops and the amount of diesel fuel in the air. I just spent a ton of money and built a lovely, lovely screened-in patio that I enjoy tremendously. And we're lucky right now, the trees block the traffic noise pretty much through the summer. And I can't imagine the traffic noise. I also can't imagine the smell. Mia talked about the wildlife. Every year we have wildlife coming into our yard. It's part of the benefits of being retired and enjoying your back porch with a cup of coffee. And all that is going to disappear.
It wouldn't be right if I didn't say something. Duke Nealon, 30820 West 90th Street, DeSoto, Kansas. Did I tell you I've lived here over 75 years?
Here's you met up with some schoolmates recently.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
There were only 3.
But I believe you said there's about 60 acres here. I think everybody would be happy if that was a city park.
Mr. Chair, I think Mr. McGee is going to have a hard time following that. But at your discretion, allow him to speak on the topic.
Absolutely.
Exactly. No. Yeah, I'm just, a C2 doesn't make any sense there. You know, it's going to bring in crime. It's going to bring in a lot of traffic. It's going to bring in trucks. It's going to bring in all of the things that our neighborhood doesn't want. And I know I look pretty old, but I still have kids at home. And I have grandkids that I want to raise in a nice neighborhood that's safe and free of crime. And, you know, there's other places. There's a lot of land in DeSoto where you can put commercial, and it's not at this exit. So thank you for your consideration.
Any other comments on the C2 application? Okay, seeing none, then I will close the public hearing on that. If I could just make a comment on this, I really do appreciate all of you being here. I absolutely do, and I think your comments are all very well made, and you've given thought to it, and I absolutely appreciate the fact that you took the time. I do want to say a couple of things, because I think it's important before we get into our discussion for the benefit of the public that's here. One, our job is tonight to determine a zoning question. It is not to determine taxes. It is not to determine tax abatements. It is not to determine the internal structures of things that will have to happen in order to build on this property, including all those road improvements. All of those things are relevant, sure, but we're not deciding any of that tonight. So with that in mind, as we go through this discussion, please bear in mind it's not that we're ignoring some of those things, it's just we have to kind of focus on what our parameters are. So we're not going to be able to approve this for road improvements or anything else. It's just a question of, is this an appropriate place for this particular type of development? So with that, thank you very much. The matter is before the Planning Commission.
Do we want to give the developer a chance to respond to that?
Suggestion, would you like to give the developer an opportunity to speak again? Unfortunately, it is not up for a vote. As much as I'd love it to be, it's not.
I just want to throw that out there.
It seems an appropriate
Where does
thing.
he live and what car does he drive?
If there's no objection, please, I'm sorry. I'd love to be here till midnight, but it's not on my agenda.
No, he lives down. He lives in Cedar Creek. He lives, yeah, exactly. Let's follow him.
Thank you, please.
There's no apartments in Cedar Creek.
I'm Travis Schramm, representing the developer.
Thank you, Travis.
I think the real question tonight here is obviously what you said. What is appropriate in this place, right? The people that will live in this place, they don't live here yet, and they're not represented tonight.
And they won't stay.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to let him have a chance. Thank you.
All right. Housing affordability is a big crisis in our country. I think it's even more of a crisis in the Kansas City metropolitan area. There is not housing affordable to our teachers, our police officers, and our firefighters. And we're looking for opportunities to create that where they can afford to live in the communities that they serve and raise their family in great communities like DeSoto. This site is shown on the comprehensive land use plan as a mixed-use site. Lenexa City Center is a mixed-use development. Retail on the bottom, apartments on the top, extreme density. We tried to put forth a plan that respected the neighbors by transitioning out of commercial, transitioning out of multifamily into a use that was a little more acceptable to them. The realities of this site are pretty stark. There's a lot of talk about a frontage road going back and forth, and I'm not sure that this site, that's on the screen made that very clear, but there is a road from Kill Creek that goes across the site and links up to Waverly. More than half the speakers tonight talked about the traffic and the dangers of 89th Street. This is a road that would relieve that traffic by sending people from Waverly to Kill Creek without going down 89th Street, and it would, built to current city standard, would be a much improved road off 89th Street from my experience. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to be worked on here. We're already over millions of dollars into this site through land acquisition and engineering. We have a lot more work to do. We have more traffic studies to do, photometric plans, stormwater plans, et cetera. What we're looking for tonight is assurances that we can continue to move down a road with a plan that makes sense and continue to invest money in a plan that is right. I look at this site, and I've driven by it hundreds of times. If we don't put commercial at the corner of one of the busiest roads in Johnson County and an arterial road, where does it belong?
Cedar Creek, by you.
They closed that gate.
I'm sorry, please, have some respect.
We're proud of the work we do, and I know that means some neighbors don't like some of the things that we do, but we believe that people deserve a place to live, and there's plenty of opportunities all around to do that, but this site, given its location and the challenges that the site produces and the opportunities that it has, we've put together a plan that's kind of like an ecosystem, right? We have to have different uses to be able to demand more money for a site to make it work. To put that road across the site, we're estimating in the realm of $5 million. And we're gonna have to pay for that. And we have to figure out how to do that. Putting 1 acre lots on septic, you can't justify a $5 million road across the site, and you can't serve the site without 2 access points. We've worked with KDOT, you're gonna get 1 access point off K10, or off Kill Creek, within that proximity to K10. We think that it does some things to relieve that pressure. We know it's going to bring people to town, but we believe that they're the types of people that want to live in DeSoto, that value this community. And we appreciate your consideration. Be glad to stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions for the applicant?
Travis, I understand that it's cut up in a way to try to introduce and sort of buff it between the single-family homes, things like that. Obviously, we're being asked to consider all 3 things. And I don't know if you can answer this question right now or not, but if we were to not approve all 3, does that really impact your ability to move forward?
Certainly, yeah, it does. It really, obviously, if you're looking at density, and this isn't my first rodeo, like, you're likely to approve the least dense area. The density is what generates the revenue to bring in the cost of that big arterial road, and then the subsequent sewers, et cetera. So
You got to the point of what I was getting at. Thank you.
My question is.
I'm sorry, public comments over at this point.
We're done?
Thank you. Matters before the planning commission.
I guess I got one question for Travis. Is there a lot of the comments that the city people have made, it's about the R3 butting up to Waverly. Is there any flexibility in adjusting that eastern line, moving it west and kind of integrate a little more R2 in there, or are you kind of?
we haven't done a site plan here. Let's be honest, that triangle in the northwest corner, or northeast corner, sorry.
Okay.
You see there's a draw coming through there. The reality is it's not gonna get built on.
Okay.
I mean, it just, but it's a density issue, right? Like, building alignments, those types of things, they get played out. This, I'm actually disappointed that these squares are on the plan, because they were just chucked on there by a civil engineer, and that's it. There's no thought to the layout. There's no thought to the topography. One of the things that I think would be interesting to explore is an increased buffer along where Waverly would be. I think that would be a great opportunity. Tree preservation on that side as well. I mean, I think those are stipulations that might make sense. And furthermore, in an R3 environment like this, and we're playing with densities, we can bring the buildings closer together on the site plan and allow for exterior buffering on the site. So those things we would definitely explore. but I'm not sure how to introduce a stipulation like that.
It wouldn't be a zoning stipulation. It's gonna be about your site plan. Sure. So, and all those things are gonna come into play, so you can guarantee that if approved, you're gonna hear about it. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Matters before the planning commission. Commissioners, good luck.
I'd like to start out with a question for Brad. Are there buffer requirements between, say, C2 and R1?
Absolutely, yes, we have a buffering requirement.
So those, is there buffering between R3 and R1?
Yes.
So this plan doesn't show any of that, but there will be.
It does not, and it's just a very preliminary development, and based on a lot of the comments we've heard tonight and what Travis Schramm said, that's something we could certainly talk to him about increasing that buffer between those two uses.
And I guess, I think I agree with a lot of what you folks have said here. I would be primarily concerned with traffic. I drove 89th and Waverly and right before the meeting, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't run into any cars while I was doing that. But that's a condition, that's an existing condition that is not going to get any better. And one of the requirements the city will make and the traffic study will show is that there's going to be traffic going that way, and those roads are insufficient to carry existing traffic, so that they need to be improved. And that's something the city and the developer will have to work out, which we can't address now. But I guess in my mind, the idea that traffic's an issue would not make me object to this, because I see it as an issue already. And
you only listened to half of the arguments tonight?
This isn't a discussion right now. I'm just kind of making a statement. But I think it would be good to, when the plan comes around, is to have discussions to see if there's any common ground with the residents out there, assuming this moves forward. When the plan's presented, to see if there can be some common ground reached with the residents here.
Yeah, so we sat here for over 2 hours listening to public comment on these rezoning applications. I mean, this corner, it's a corner of, a very heavily trafficked highway, K10 and Keel Creek. I mean, any corner you go around the metro area like this, it is a commercial, multi-family area to be developed. And I do think, they have, transition type zoning from, the R2, the smaller lot, there's been a lot of comments on that. But, the developers indicated that he's wanting to do single family on the R2, which is a transition from your large lot houses that are out there, and transition into the R3, which is up adjacent to K10. I sat here and listened to your comments. I feel for everything you guys say. So I'm a little on the fence on the R3, but I do think the C2 that's kind of the spot, in my opinion, where I think that needs to go. And then the R2, it is a transition from the R1 zoning. And there is a lot of, topography that is going to be addressed when that site plan comes in that will be good for buffering. So I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say on the commission, but
Commissioner Milburn, I'm in the same boat as you are. I actually am not opposed to C2 and R2. The reason why I posed the question to the developer is because I am also on the fence about the R3. But I'm assuming that's why it needs to work in this combination in order to foot the bill, as it were. So I'm a little bit of an impasse as to how to address it.
I'm pretty much against the R3 simply because butting up next to the large lots to the east, there doesn't seem to make much of a transition area to me. The R2, I'm on the fence. I would just as soon see that stay R1. The C2, I could see some commercial there, but I don't know that the entire area, the longer area up towards the north, just cut that straight off across, have it on the corner. But in going through the staff's recommendations and our golden rules that we have to follow, it says these criteria are set out by state statute and the regulations serve as a basis for a decision. They're not intended to be a scorecard upon completion. One criteria could outweigh all of the others. When I go through and look all this up, it's about a 7-6, 7-4-6 against. So to me, there's not overwhelming support with that. So all in all, I'm leaning more against the whole thing.
I'll let you have the last word.
I'll go ahead and go. I'll make comment. Just so you guys know, I live about less than a quarter mile from 95th Street and Edgerton Road. If you guys are familiar with that area, that has all been rezoned M1, and Panasonic's less than probably a mile and a quarter from my house. I understand your comments and the impact that this is going to have for change. Every day it's a different world. I don't let my kids walk down and get the mail out of my mailbox. So I understand where you guys are coming from. So you are heard for sure, but also, I see change. What's proposed here is kind of, like they said, they're buffering in, they're easing into it. What we're up against out there is no buffer. So be fortunate that what you're seeing is somebody trying to help you guys out. I'm just telling you, there could be worse scenarios that you guys are faced with that you have no say against. So, they're making an attempt to ease this into your properties, and it's not just like they're building ginormous warehouses that are huge right next to your house.
We're making an attempt except for R1.
I'll follow up if I can on Todd's comments, because I think they're spot on. So I've only lived here 32 years, so Duke, you've got me beat. You've known that.
I knew I did.
Yeah. I did 8 years of the Planning Commission back in the early 2000s, and this is my second tour of duty, partly for reasons like tonight, quite frankly, because I think it's really important that you have these discussions. I will tell you that in my 32 years here, if DeSoto hasn't been about the highest municipal tax of any jurisdiction in Kansas, it's been the top 5 pretty much every year, if I'm not wrong.
That's total mills. That
Total
includes
mills.
schools and all of the taxing.
The city itself, and part of the reason why is because we all built on large acre development. We have over 50 miles of paved roads in this town. It's probably a bigger number than that now, but that's what I remember. Paying for that and keeping it up with our own water plant and trying to continue to be our own city the way we have is extraordinarily expensive. Add to that we had 9,000 acres of brownfield that when I moved out here was going to be the wonderful World Oz Park. And then after that, the county was going to build a new city in a park that was going to be that. And after the 21st Century Parkway got destroyed and we weren't going to let that happen anymore, it sat fallow. And to have someone who's putting manufacturing in that brownfield, it kind of makes sense because it was manufacturing to begin with. And if you want to build your home out on that brownfield, more power to you. But all of that happened, granted. So here you have an opportunity to build and be proactive and try to figure out how do you handle this growth. It's going to happen, not because of anything any of us wanted or did, but because of the fact we decided to build right next to 9,000 acres of brownfield that someday somebody was going to turn into a manufacturing plant, which is now happening. Okay, so how do we plan for it? Well, we look at a comprehensive plan. We take a look at things. You say, well, where are your major interchanges? You've got Kill Creek, you've got Lexington, you've got Edgerton Road, you've got Evening Star. You've got 4 interchanges. We can surrender Kill Creek and say, fine, it's always going to be a residential area. We'll never have any commercial development on it. But recognize what that's going to do to our taxes if we don't use those resources to help build our tax base.
I thought this wasn't a tax conversation.
I'm talking about policy issues, not tax abatements or anything else. I'm just saying, here you have a question of the appropriate use of land. Now, I totally understand. I live at 91st and Kill Creek. I live in Oak Country. I've seen everything that you guys are talking about. I absolutely deal with it every day. I personally don't think that interchange is going to be surrendered forever. And so the question is this an appropriate plan, or do you want to roll the dice on the next one? Because the next one's probably going to come. And it's not going to happen on the south side of Kill Creek because we don't have sewers that we can get to that. We don't have sewers we can get to this right now. So a lot of this is going to be perspective of whether it happens. The question is whether this is the right plan. And I do think that the idea of having a transition between the existing homeowners and that development that's on the frontage of the highway is the right answer. This attempts to do that. It certainly doesn't do it to my satisfaction with regard to what's along Waverly, and I think there's issues with kind of the overall thought on that. The bottom line is though, I heard Glenn say, don't ever improve my roads. I love them the way they are, and I've heard several of the rest of you talk about how dangerous they are to walk on. So I don't know we have consensus on what to do with our road network. But if you want it to be safer, if you want it to be improved, somebody's got to pay for that. And if you don't have some sort of development opportunity, well, our taxes aren't going to pay for that alone. So be careful what we wish for on that. I think that we do need to be conscious of certainly whether this is the right time for this, whether this is the right overall scope and plan for this particular area. I'm personally not willing to surrender the idea that there would be some commercial opportunity at this exit. I think there should be, just because I think it's best for the town and best for our tax base to have that exit used. But I think for a variety of reasons, I can't support this proposal, and it's because I just don't think that it's been given the appropriate attention to the buffer of what's going to be needed for the neighboring properties, certainly to the east. Having the potential to build R3 up against Waverly like that, I think is problematic. And this may have been just a topographical, how does this lay out, what's the smartest thing to do? They may completely decide that's not what they wanted to do, but we're taking one tract and we're breaking it into 3 different zones and we're drawing lines on the map. And because the lines are where they are, I have a problem with it.
Well, I agree with both of these gentlemen here because I've listened to all this too. I know what it's like to have to make changes. We don't want to lose our individuality with our properties that we've spent years and years on. We've got our time, our love tied up in these properties, so I understand that. I do think that we need to get some more commercial properties in here because that does help our tax base. Even when you guys see a tax abatement, remember that there's going to be huge tax dollars that come back in and it's going to balance everything out eventually. So, because right now when there's a tax abatement, they're not getting any money off of that.
That's why they can say, yes, you can have tax abatement for a while. But eventually, it's gonna come back and it's gonna help the personal property people with their taxes. Because, yeah, we are taxed tremendously. So, I'm not sure I'm pleased with the property or the lines that they're drawing there. And I would like to see some of the proposals left the way they are rather than changed. So there you go.
I think everybody's had a chance to say something. Anybody want to say anything else? Motion?
What do we, well, clarified question, where are we starting?
So we have to do each of these separately. So the first application is the R1, or the R2. Is there a motion to either recommend approval or denial of that application?
For R2.
R2 or R3?
From the R1 to the R2. I'm sorry, the R1 to R3 is the first one. My bad. The first application is for the R1 to the R3.
R1 to R3, I would make a motion to deny R3.
Yeah. Sorry, just gonna make it slower.
I would make a motion to deny R3 until sufficient adjustments have been made to the tract in order to buffer against the east side of the property.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Manson,
No.
Templin,
For the recommendations to deny, right?
Yeah.
I'm voting in favor of that.
okay. Lane,
So we're voting to
voting to
table.
deny. Yes.
To denial.
Yes.
Okay. Huggins,
Yes.
Milburn,
No.
Maddock,
So, yes, I'm voting in favor of denial.
That's right.
Yes.
You're voting for the denial.
Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The motion carries, but it's for denial.
That's right.
Motion to deny carry.
Motion to deny carries. Next application is from the R1 to the R2. Any further discussion? Motions?
I personally do not have a problem with the R2, the way it's laid out.
Make a motion, we recommend approval of the R2 zoning change from R1.
Second.
Moved and seconded for a motion to approve, recommend approval of the zoning from R1 to R2. Roll call?
Manson,
Yes.
Templin,
No.
Lane,
No.
Huggins,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Schultz.
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next would be looking for a motion to make the recommendation of change to a rezone from R1 to C2.
Again, I think C2 is appropriate for the corner. However, I don't like the buffering on the north side of the property line.
Thank you. Motion denied.
I make a motion to deny the C2.
Motion to recommend denial of the C2 has been made. Second? Second, Schultz. Roll call?
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Milburn,
No.
Huggins,
No.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Manson.
No.
Okay.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you all very much for your time. Should we do the 5-minute recess? We'll be in recess for 5 minutes and we'll reconvene.
Recess for 5 minutes.
Think about it.
Yeah, so it'll go to the city council's second meeting in October. Which is the third.
17th October. Maybe that involves Shelley. I thought you guys were set.
We just denied it.
And then she gets 75 of your people.
Oh, hell yeah.
Typically, they do listen to our radio. They don't have to, but and that was the problem that I could see what you guys were talking about. I wouldn't want apartments right next to my property or a commercial property next to
Terrible news.
yeah, I live off of 90th and Waverly, just on the other side.
You did a good job managing all this. I wish they would have I know. But it's, well, I just wish people wouldn't get involved before it has absolutely affected them. Yeah, I know. And they advertise, where is it that they advertise it as something that nobody ever wanted? Legal record, yes. They need to put it on Internet or something like that. Well, they had Discover Minnesota. That was disappointing, I thought. She got a lot of
Yeah, first time Thursday. Sometimes there's three days.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So what happens then? Yeah, so, maybe I'll still sign it. Hey, you go out there, you may be able to
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Like to reconvene the meeting here. Thanks. Okay, item 5B on our agenda is consider rezoning. Excuse me. Thank you all. We need to get back to our meeting. You're not done yet? Either get out or sit down, one or the other. You can sit if you'd like.
You have to be quiet.
Yep. We'd like to now move to item 5B, consider rezoning at Clearview City.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Brad, staff report.
All right, thank you, Chairman. This is a long-anticipated rezoning application. Talked with Dave Rhodes several times about redeveloping and rehabilitating the items out at Clearview City. We've had sort of a lot of false starts, but we're finally, I think, at a place where we can move forward with a potential redevelopment and rezoning with this. And the reason that it needs to be rezoned is the tract is currently zoned Business General C2. As we all know, the Clearview City development is actually a multifamily development, so the zoning doesn't align with its land use. The other thing about this recommended zoning is because it's a tract, it's part of the historic register, so it is on the Register of Historic Places as a planned development. And because of that and some issues dealing with tax credits and money to redevelopment from the state, the applicant is required to be adhered to the standard which mimics the original intent of the design, which was part of when the Sunflower Ammunition plant was built in the 1940s. So we do have that sort of umbrella over our consideration that we can't deviate too far from what the original intent of the plan was. Therefore, when we've had meetings with the applicant, decided to go with the planned development route because it does give them some flexibility as far as like Commissioner Huggins brought up last time, a 28-foot wide road versus a 24-foot wide road, which is what was originally built. So there's some nuance to some of the changes versus what we would normally require in the city code. That's one example. The other one that talk about in a little bit is the architectural standards. The building will be restored to their concrete masonry unit front, which is something is not an approved architectural feature in our city code. So that's another thing that is because of the historic preservation aspect, had to go through the PD process for rezoning. So I'll kind of run through these fairly quickly, and I've talked about the process with the State Historic Preservation Office, often called the SHPO. All right, so there's 341 units, as I recall, out there. We're looking at the count, and about half of them are being lived in now. So there's going to be a fairly significant effort to turn those all into habitable units. The through-fire roads, the sidewalks, the curbs, gutters, parking, everything is going to be rebuilt, redeveloped, tore out, and replaced. So there's a lot of investment that's going to go into this process. There's going to be a mix of garages in some of the units. I've spent a little bit more time out there driving through. Some of them will have on-street parking. Some will probably have to park in the alleys. It's a very different type of approach to some, and that's another thing that we would not typically allow in our standard off-street parking for the city of DeSoto within our city code. So that's another item why we decided to bring this forward with the PD. Now, there are adequate parking spaces. It's just we don't allow to back into a public right-of-way. And we had that, if you'll recall, the residents in Lexington, they initially proposed that off of 90th Street, I believe, and that was removed from their site plan when they brought it forward. So that's another thing that, once again, is back to that historic preservation design that we need to adhere to. But the ultimate goal is to get Clearview City redeveloped to a standard that is much better than it is now. So with that, we do have several things that we looked at. You know, the dumpsters, there will be community dumpsters in locations. Those will be rebuilt. There is a landscape plan that's been submitted, even though there's a significant amount of existing vegetation and mature trees out there as well. But there will be some improvements there. We do have a recreational requirement for the PD development and with 30% open space, and there's playground, picnic shelter, basketball courts. Those are actually shown on sheet 5. So all those things that we would still push and need to see for planned development are being met. It's just there's a few things, as I mentioned, the road widths, the concrete masonry units, the parking situation that we've pulled back from the city code, and that's once again why we're in the PD development process. I did mention the architectural standards. There are renderings included in the submittal. The buildings look very much improved over what is out there now, but once again, they are going to have the concrete masonry unit blocks. So it'll be different, but it will be a much better product than what is out there now. There's been no signage submitted for this, and I mentioned the landscape plan is contained with the overall development plan. And there are mature vegetation on site. A lot of it will be removed and replaced. So that's included as well. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is the easements and lot lines. The way it's proposed now is the rights of way and the parking would be included in the right of way as far as the pull-off parking. I'm not sure that that's a route we want to go at this point. I thought initially that we would deal with that during the final plat stage, but it is shown on the PD. So it's something that maybe Mike and Joe could weigh in on as far as how we want to navigate our way through that. But overall, the parking is adequate for the location itself. I do want to jump to page 4 of the staff report. It shows the subject property and the rezoning, and it's actually for this odd-shaped tract. There is some additional phasing that is not part of the PD. It'll probably be rezoned, or those will stay C2 until there's a final plan. There was a more of a commercial development out there. That building is not part of this, and it'll remain C2. And then, as you can see in the southwest corner, there's also some C2 in that area as well, which is vacant at this point. But the developer has shown some future housing there. Whether or not it gets included in a later PD, we'll see. But this is just the phase 1 development of this property. And then if you go to page 5, you can see the overall plan for the current layout, which once again, the streets and the roads and the alleys, all that stay precisely the same, other than the fact that they are going to be improved. Now also the sidewalks will be ADA accessible. They're some places 3 feet wide, sometimes they're just pretty busted up. And there are other areas that there are 5 foot wide sidewalks, so those will all be improved to 5 feet to meet ADA. As far as the zoning compatibility standards, I went through all of these and have, by and large, they're all positive. This is something that, since I've started with the city of DeSoto, we've looked at Clearview City and wanted to see some improvements and development. I think the spurring on of the Panasonic, the employment center, the fact that now that there's a lot more traffic and talking about workforce housing, and this is one of those areas that's certainly key to that. We've approved a lot of multifamily here recently, and nobody's broken ground, but there are workers, there are people that are living in this location now, and so it's really important that I think this is one that's going to move forward potentially much quicker than some of the other ones that we have had. Once again, the utilities, as far as right now, it's on a lagoon system. There's being a benefit district set up for this area. They'll tie into the City of DeSoto sanitary sewer system. So that'll certainly be a benefit. As far as there was some discussion of, the policing and things like that, well, there's already people living out there, so there'll be very little impact to the police issues out at that location. And just as an aside, I've talked to Brandon about this, and we've looked at the sheriff's reports, and it is a very safe place. They get very few calls out there, so it is a good, civic-minded place. These people are workforce housing. They're the ones that we're really trying to help. So with this, I'm not going to go through all these detailed categories. They're generally positive across the board. I think it's a very good plan for the city of DeSoto to get this area improved. The applicant, Dave Rhodes, is here. If you'd like to have him address the planning commission, I'm certainly he'd be willing to do so. But with that, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Brad, I'm just a little bit unclear. It says 1A, 1B, 1C, but phase 2, 3, and 4 are not included. I'm just a little bit unclear of geographically where all that lands.
Yeah, the drawings are very, they're very complete and very thorough, but there's just a lot of information on them. So if we could get to, I don't know if we can pull it up, Mike. It's
Maybe. Which drawing?
well, those are part of the CFS drawing, so it's kind of hard to.
The kidney-shaped area, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, it certainly is. Basically where it says A1, that's sort of south and Sunshine Drive and Lane V, that's not part of this rezoning.
So are we seeking to rezone phases 1C, B,
And A.
1A, B, and C, all three of those are for the PD.
Yes.
So really, we're not talking about any phases that aren't on this piece of paper.
Correct, yes.
Okay, well, that clears it up, so, okay.
Yeah, and there, it does say phase 2. We're just talking about phase 1.
Got it. Thank you.
So are each of those, like, for example, between, I guess it'd be between Strawberry Avenue and call it lane P and Q, is that just one lot? There's 6 buildings on that? Is that what the intent is on that? Like, that'll be platted as one big lot? Is that the intent?
Well, I guess, Aaron, you might want to answer that, but yeah.
And first, let me apologize for making you sit through all that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Aaron Gaspers with CFS Engineers here representing the ownership group. I do have some of this stuff may not be with the submittal. I don't know if this helps, but here's more of the 1A, B, and C. The black is the 1A, the purple is the 1B, and the yellow is the 1C.
Thank you.
So those are the defined phase 1 areas that we plan to reconstruct in that order. The idea is to keep, shift the residents around and keep them on site. Yeah, it would be more ideal to do it all at once, but with people living there, moving them around is our plan.
So we're essentially going to double the population out there once this is all complete, correct?
No. It's not quite double. What is it? There's about 260 units.
There's 238 units that are currently occupied. That contributes to about 480 people. And we expect this to balloon up to maybe 550 to 600.
About a third.
So about a third increase.
So we anticipate this would be an increase in population in this area by a third.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, back to your original question, yes, all the main roads and the lots in between the lanes would be individual lots.
Okay. And then like the lanes will be public right away.
Yes.
Okay. Now in those parking counts, is any parking counted in that alley for the
No.
counts? Okay.
No, you're not gonna be able to park in these alleys. They are 12-foot wide, right? They're gonna have to, they're gonna.
10 foot wide, but yes.
Yeah, there's gonna be no parking in the alleys.
We don't allow it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we keep it open for emergency vehicles. We don't allow parking in them.
So then all the garages, are some of the garages access off the lanes in?
Correct. So we have roughly 128 garage spaces. Then that accounts for 128 driveway spaces in front of those garages, and then we have 527 on-site parking spaces. So there's 783 total.
Okay.
We were provided with a letter from Spencer Preservation, I guess in supplement to the materials tonight. And if I read this right, the historic designation is primarily the layout and the street design is really what the historic preservation is, as opposed to the actual structures themselves.
No, the structures themselves are historic. Windows, doors, garages, chimneys, are all historic features of this site.
Well, I'm sorry, this letter doesn't say that, that's why I'm asking. I don't know what that means then.
Well, the point of that letter is when we were here about a month ago, there was questions and concerns about the 24-foot road as opposed to the city standard 28. So that letter was made.
Just to address the street issue.
Right, just in support of one of the reasons why we want to keep the 24-foot width.
So is the fire marshal like this?
I don't think it's been sent to the fire marshal yet.
Well, no, it has actually Cameron Hoffmer's our building official. He's the fire marshal, so we will have to coordinate with the fire chief. It is kind of a different situation with Northwest Consolidated.
I was just curious because they usually want 16 feet to get the trucks through. Whether he's concerned with the alleys or.
Yeah, I mean, usually all the main roads meet that standard. And for the most part, some of the lanes are shorter and can be accessed from the main roads. But yeah, it's the balance between the historical standards and conversation with the fire chief to address his concerns will be needed.
When will we get that? I mean, do we need to do that as part of the PD?
If I could just make a quick comment about that, when we submitted our application to the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation to get the designation for the tax credits, we actually got a letter of support from the fire chief. I can get that letter and send it to you all. I don't have that, but that was in support of the rehab of this project.
Well, it probably will be important for the city council, because if we recommend approval, it's got to go to the council anyhow, right?
You could make it subject to the fire marshal's.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably something we'll have to do.
I'm good with that.
Mark, anything else you want to follow up on that?
Well, I understood this letter, talking about SHPO's interest in the existing site. I guess, is there any kind of a traffic study supporting this having the capacity to carry these cars?
I have some numbers in your questions last month. I came up with some numbers. So what we did is we looked at traffic that would be generated in a fully developed site. And this number also includes, even though it's not part of this application, it includes phase 2. So we wanted to account for that traffic as well. That totals 397 units across the entire site, which by our traffic numbers will come up to about 2,270 vehicles per day. That's the ADT, the average daily traffic. And usually from that number, about 10% of that is your PM peak. So that is about 227 vehicles per hour in the peak. So when we're looking at that traffic generated, that could almost be 1 point. But we've got to look at that this development is spread out over 5 streets, Strawberry, Rosewood, Village, Lakeshore, and Sunshine, as well as will be 4 entrances and exits on the site, as opposed to, so what I'm saying is all this traffic isn't going to be funneled in one spot. So generally these numbers could also be divided by 4 or 5 to blanket the traffic across the entire development. And also we don't expect, we expect Sunflower and 103rd to do its job and really have this isn't a convenient cut through. So there shouldn't be any additional cut through traffic. So yes, and taking those numbers and dividing by 4 or 5 can easily, a local road can easily handle that. You start looking at 10 to 15,000 vehicles per day when you start wanting to design in a collector type of, which is your next street up, a collector type of scenario, and even more up to, let me see, 15 to 60,000. You're talking arterials. So those are the type of numbers to gauge that, and just in 1 point we're 2,000. Just over 2,000 vehicles per day, spread over 5 streets.
So this wouldn't even meet a residential street standard.
A residential street standard can handle these volumes of traffic generated by this development.
So what would be the level of service on these, say that perimeter road?
Well, what I'm saying is, we're getting to anything under like 10,000, 5 to 10,000 vehicles per day. When you get to that level of traffic, that's when you start going up to like a collector.
Right.
So anything under that, a local residential road can handle. And what I'm saying is we're talking about 400 to 500 vehicles per day on these streets, blanketed over the whole development.
Yeah, so you turned in a report to that effect?
Well, at this point, a traffic study wasn't required, but based on your questions and concern last meeting is when I just went ahead and went back and generated those numbers. I'm more than willing to put together a short letter kind of calling that stuff out. I'm fine with that. But that was the analysis I did after your questions and concerns last month.
I would say if staff's satisfied, I wouldn't question it.
I guess one thing I also might add, Commissioners, they're gonna be adding additional access points on the Sunflower, is what Aaron has said. Traffic volume will be spread out along Sunflower as well, not just the 2, Lakeshore and Village Drive. Because currently, I guess it's Sunshine and Lakeshore don't go out to Sunflower Road. Well, they were opened up for construction, but.
Yeah. So Village Drive is a right in, right out, correct?
Correct, off 103rd, yes.
Lakeshore Drive is your only left out of there, right?
Actually, Lakeshore Drive is off 103rd, is right in, right out. There's
Neither one of those have a left turn onto 103rd Street.
Correct, they don't, but the function of the roundabout just to the west is to take a right and just circle around the roundabout.
Okay. I was just thinking about how much traffic you are talking about putting on Sunflower Road. What are the improvement plans for Sunflower Road at this site?
Oh, we don't have a capital improvement plan designated.
what it is.
There's gonna be some maintenance activity because the road's been torn up with all the construction, but just kind of a maintenance thing for now. I think long-term it will be on the CIP, but nothing that's been identified or programmed yet.
Where do you think school buses go if they pick kids up here? Would they go up Sunflower or would they go roundabout?
They go 102nd Street.
So 102nd, I don't even see where that cuts. It's probably,
It's directly across from Sunshine going east.
okay. Okay, I see. Well, I mean, typically in a PD like this, we would have some sort of a traffic study, wouldn't we?
I think kind of what Aaron's getting at is he looked at the whole development, and the whole development generated only 2,500 traffic for
22,
the
yeah,
whole
20.
day, for the
Right.
whole day, right?
Right.
He's saying at the peak, in the afternoon, when it's the highest,
Right,
he's saying only 10% of that occurs at that one time, which is only 250 trips. And he's saying that's over the whole development, and then he's dividing it by the 4 entrances.
right.
So he's saying it's even less than that. So he's saying I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but he's saying it's minimal impact based
And-
on that calculation.
Correct. And we're talking too, I mean, keep in mind, this is the total traffic that would be generated by the development. Where, just like the number of units we were talking about, it's gonna increase by a third. I mean, there's traffic out there today. So I would say that the traffic increase would be about a third of what's out there today to get to these 2,300 vehicles per day, those numbers.
Any questions for the applicant?
Two, I guess, on the setbacks on those alleys, is that why you did the PD? Because those setbacks from the right of way on the alley, they're so close to the building, is that?
Right, essentially the buildings can't move,
Okay.
so.
That and the streets and the architectural elements and all the other reasons.
And then one other thing, I'm still bringing up the sanitary sewer stuff, but the line that you have shown on the north side for the proposed sewer, is there gonna allow access to neighbors to be able to tie into that line? Because it's kind of central through that tract, that phase 1A tract.
Well, that benefit district design is by others.
Okay.
When I answer this, I'm guessing, but usually, yes, it's designed to go up the tributary for future connections of any property. Now, the question is, right, who's in the benefit district now and who's gonna be in it in the future? You know, if you're in it now, you can connect to it at any time and you're paying your specials. If you're not in it now, if you wanna connect to it, then that's when you need to get in the benefit district and start paying your specials. But yes, generally, when they run it up the tributary, it's available for all properties. All properties are accounted for.
Do we need to add an element to require the applicant not to protest the creation of benefit district?
The applicant is already part of the benefit district.
It's already done.
It's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my concern would be I wouldn't want the applicant to be able to protest anybody tying into that line since it is done on the property line.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that ship sailed. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to protest that.
That'll be a public line.
Okay.
But I guess that raises this question, is the line size for the entire tributary area?
Yes, it is. As best they can determine what the uses are gonna be, it's crystal ball. Yeah. Yeah. Engineering judgment.
Yeah.
It's a 30-inch line. That's a pretty good size for a sanitary. Yes, I would, again, it's my guess, but if I were designing it, I would size it for the entire tributary.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, right? So at this point, I would open the public hearing for any members of the public who wish to be heard on this matter. Please approach the podium and give your name and address.
Tim McNamara, 32225 West 88th Street, DeSoto. And I own a small piece of property on the bordering the north edge of this property. So I was invited to the neighborhood meeting, and I went to the neighborhood meeting and met these folks and asked a lot of questions, asked all my questions. I live just off of Kill Creek Road, and I was here for the whole meeting tonight. I didn't know that all that was going to be heard. I was outside in the hallway, so I wasn't in the room, but I guess I would just say, after talking with these folks and understanding this project, to me, for all the reasons that people here were against the earlier proposal, this makes perfect sense to happen because it cleans up that area, it provides affordable housing. It's just a major step forward, and all the infrastructure is either there or going in there, around there. So to me, it makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on this? Assuming we don't have anybody online.
Let me check. I believe that to be correct. Yes, we're alone there.
Only if we're lucky. All right, I'll close the public hearing at this point. The matter then is before the planning commission.
I think it's an excellent opportunity to fix that, and they're gonna relocate the residents while their new places or they will be relocated, and that will be their permanent place. I just think it's a really good opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5B to rezone the C2 piece of property to a PD as it's stated in the documentation here.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
There was some discussion about putting a clause in there about fire marshal approval.
Would you like to amend the motion?
I would like to amend the motion to approve item 5B to rezone C2 to PD with an added verbiage for a fire marshal to review and approve, specific to the alleyways, I guess, and the 24-foot wide streets.
It's probably just approval of the fire marshal, fire department.
Okay. Chief. That's more for you, Edgar, than me, but.
And I still second it.
Second has been renewed.
Perfect.
Any further discussion?
Okay. Manson?
Yes.
Templeton?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Huggins?
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
Madoc?
Yes.
Milburn?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I believe that concludes our agenda for tonight. Just a hearty thank you for all of you for handling that very well. I appreciate it.
I object to closing the meeting. I think we need to stay here until probably 6 o'clock.
So we have an objection to adjournment. Anyone join that?
No.
No.
No, oh,
Was there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Oh, she changed her mind. We are adjourned.
It's a woman's right, you know.